Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Courtside Soundoff podcast today. I am Josh Imhoff. He is Angel Ortega, and it is finally time. It is Soundoff 100. After 2 years of doing the show, we have finally reached the pinnacle of hitting the three-digit mark, episode 100. There is a lot to talk about today. We got some special segments. We got some fan questions. Before we get into that, I want to talk to you guys about Rogue Energy. This episode of the Courtside Soundoff podcast is brought to you by Rogue Energy. Rogue Energy was founded in January 2017 to be the best gaming drink in the world. They've developed a premium stack in the form of a delicious energy and focus drink. It's designed to replace unhealthy canned energy drinks, coffee, and even traditional pre-workouts. Rogue Energy is sugar-free and is loaded with vitamins, antioxidants, and nootropics. They designed Rogue Energy for the emerging professional and competitive gaming market and continues to have fantastic carryover and success with students, athletes, entrepreneurs, and anyone looking to optimize their mental and physical performance. If you want 10% off your order, use the code SOUNDOFF at checkout. That's code SOUNDOFF at checkout for 10% off of all your energy needs. Last Saturday night from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, the big boys were throwing down. Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, taking on Curtis Blades. And Curtis Blades was one of the bigger favorites on the card, and for the first, I'd say, round and a half, he looked like it. He was showcasing his striking very well. He was mixing in a lot of kicks, a lot of stuff we hadn't seen in Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades has always been a very wrestling heavy oriented guy, but I was watching him and he was putting it on Derek Lewis. Derek wasn't hurt at any point, but he was taking some punishment, especially on the legs. However, as we've all learned with Derek Lewis, he only needs one. Curtis, on his first takedown attempt of the fight, he shoots in for double leg, ends up eating an uppercut. That was the first strike, or one of the first strikes Derek landed all night. He ends up knocking him out with it. Curtis goes down like just a heap, like a sack of potatoes. And Derek jumps on the ground and pound, and that was it, man. Not that surprising, just because this is the sort of thing that we've come to notice out of Derek Lewis, and something we've come to expect. But what were your thoughts on the fight itself, man?
If there was a way for it to happen for Derek, that was literally the way it would happen. There was no other way it was going to go down. But I'll give it to Derek, man. I mean, at no point that I feel like he was going to even when I saw Curtis walking him down, I'm like, okay, this it might go like this, but no takedown has happened. And then the takedown was attempted near the end of that first round. And I saw Derek stop it in relatively good fashion, so I was feeling pretty confident. And then going into the second round, I'm like, okay, this is when it should happen, right? And well, it did. For takedown attempt comes in and puts him out like a board.
Yeah, it was a rough knockout. He put him out cold. Like that was a really rough one. And then he went ahead and jumped on with two large punches, and then he said that it was Herb Dean's fault. There was some slight controversy afterwards about whether it was Herb's fault. I saw some people memeing about it. What are your actual thoughts about that as a whole? Because I know there's a lot of dudes who have gotten in, I don't want to say necessarily some trouble about it, but they've gotten some flack over the years. Derek's been a guy that's gotten some flack personally, just because he's one of those guys that until the ref's there, he's going to pound on a lifeless body no matter what situation. So what were your thoughts on that in particular?
I mean, it's part of the sport, as sad as it's sad. Like, as sad as it sounds, it's part of the sport. You know what I mean? Because in what other combat sport is there a situation like that, right? Because in boxing, if your opponent goes down, it's over, right? There's no more hits afterwards. If there's a flurry, it gets stopped, right? But that's how MMA, like how it is in MMA as well. There's no defense shown, like we saw in the Olynyk fight, which we also got to talk about this whole situation there with how Herb Dean dealt with that. Was it Herb Dean in that fight too?
I think so.
Okay. Well, we'll maybe talk about that a little bit. But yeah, man, it's just a sport, It's not the first time we've seen like this happen where people kind of get upset about it. But it's part of the sport. It really is just that simple. Is it good? No. But it's Derek's job to until the referee tells him, hey, stop, where it's over and comes and drags him off, then that's it.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Did this change your perception at all about the heavyweight division in terms of where Derek stands? Not necessarily because obviously we know that John's moving up. I know he just released a training video, and he looked like a heavyweight. And obviously we got Stipe and Ngannou going down. I mean, if you were to go ahead and guess how the heavyweight division plays out from here, let's go ahead and say you're Sean Shelby, what would you go ahead and book Derek Lewis's next fight as?
Realistically, I think just because it makes kind of sense, I feel like he should fight the winner of the title. In my opinion.
Really?
It makes
over
sense
John?
to me. See, that's the issue. Because if John comes up, my thing is I would have loved to see John fight like one guy and then fight for the title. Because that's all it would have taken, right? It's like, shit, he can fight at heavyweight. No surprise. Right?
Yeah.
And then bam, title shot. And I think that would have been it. But I think as far as me, I feel like it's like if Stipe wins, it's kind of like shit. Now we have to wait how long, and then John has to come in and fight, right? A lot is writing on how that fight plays out, right? So if Stipe wins, it's gonna be a minute before Stipe fights again, right? And
as is tradition.
As is tradition, and it's gonna be, and therefore it's gonna be a minute before John gets that fight, and a minute before the rest of the heavyweights get to fight for anybody in contending position. So if Ngannou wins, Ngannou could probably defend the title in between a fight while Jones makes his step into heavyweight, and then Jones could fight for the title. I feel like they could do that route too. It's just more likely that they'll probably just go straight into John Jones for the title.
Yeah, I think they've been pretty open about that, and that's something that I'm pretty much on the same board with you. I would have loved to see John fight heavyweight first. In fact, I wanted to see him fight Overeem before Overeem had fought Volkov. I was like, that's what I would like to see personally next. Now, that being said, they're going to do John for the title just because they've given John a lot of leeway in terms of I guess giving him kind of what he wants in a way. But that being said, I would have liked to see Derek fight for the title next. He deserves it, and I think part of it is just because the heavyweight division is just so messed up right now.
And he's such an oddball too, dude. Like really? Like in that whole mixture, he's not like your typical martial artist. It doesn't seem like he really cares. So it's just kind of interesting to see him in that position, right? I think that's what it is. At least for me, that's what it is.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just I don't like it, man. I don't like the heavyweight division right now, just purely because it's been. When did DC and Stipe fight? 3 years ago now, I think.
Something like
it's
that,
been fucked up since then. You know how like you can kind of trace back for like years middleweight, you can trace it all the way back to like UFC 199 when Bisping knocked out Rockhold and everything was messed up for like 3 or 4 years after. You could trace all the heavyweight division stuff back to like 226. But regardless of that, I guess we can go ahead and move on to the co-main as of now. Yana Kunitskaya picking up a decision win. I saw some people saying it was controversial, but regardless, picking up a decision winner for Caitlyn Vera. What do you think about that fight?
Kind of the way I imagined, right? Same as the Derek one. I thought Caitlyn was gonna, go to the ground, kind of, her bread and butter right there. Yana obviously sticking to her striking, and I mean, I wasn't like up in arms about it. I get it though. I heard Josh Thompson talking about it. He kind of felt like Caitlyn Vera won the fight. I don't know. It's one of those where I feel very weird about. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure how I felt I'm not sure how I felt about it either. Purely just because like I'm always somebody who's always valued damage over control. And I feel like Yana did significantly more damage than Caitlyn in that fight, but at the same point, it's like you can make a case that, I mean, obviously, round one, if I remember correctly, I didn't rewatch the fight, I'll say that. Round one, I thought was clearly Caitlyn's. Round two, clearly Yana's. And then round three, I thought it was pretty much a toss-up. And so I was fine with the decision. I was a little bit surprised it was like a unanimous decision that so many people were cool with it. I saw some people saying robbery, but in a segment we'll talk about later, sometimes robberies are not always clear. And sometimes it's just heat of the moment thing. So I was fine with the decision over time. But was there anything else on the undercard you would talk about?
Well, going down, skipping one, the Olynyk fight, once again with Herb. How'd you feel about that? Just your thoughts on it when Olynyk's on the cage and Herb's telling him fight, fight, fight. I thought Herb did the right thing.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. Because Olynyk is a guy who traditionally can take a lot of punishment. Now, should we give more leeway to guys like that because they probably have a lot more brain damage? That's arguable. But at the same time, it's like you can make the case that he should get more leeway than a guy who's an example for a situation like this. Who's Overeem, you know what I mean? So I get why he told him to fight back. I don't have a problem with that though. I didn't think there was a whole lot of controversy there.
I thought he did the right thing as
well.
But
shout out Chris Dawkins, man. That kid.
Yeah, shout out, yeah, dude. That was really fun. The heavyweights really showed out on this card, right? Same with the Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised they went ahead and ranked Chris Dawkins over Espinal. But that being said, man, Tom Aspinall, I'm probably getting my fact. This could be a Courtside Soundoff fact right here, boys. I'm not sure if it's true or not. I'm 99% sure that's the first time Arlovsky's been submitted in at least a long time. Like, I don't know the exact stats on there, but since I've been watching MMA, I've never seen Arlovsky submitted.
You could have made some fat money if someone would have predicted that, by the way. It was ridiculous.
I believe it was plus 3 fat. He's lost. That was only the second time he's lost via submission. The last time that he lost via submission was actually back in, let me go ahead and get it for you, 2016. I guess I did watch that fight. Never mind.
To who?
Josh Barnett. I forgot that fight happened.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but regardless, shout out Tom Aspinall, man. Makes him undefeated in the UFC. I don't think he's ranked still, which I don't necessarily agree with. Like I said, they went ahead and ranked Dukakis over him. But regardless, man, hell of a performance. Very impressive. So I like to see where he moves on from there. But outside of that, was there anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing else on this card specifically. But like I said, I thought the heavyweight showed out. I think the heavyweight division is fine right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of to go back, not to backtrack too much, but I think actually, we'll lead into the next card.
Fair enough. One quick thing before we close this one out. Wineland against John Costanda, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Dope fight. Didn't last long. Eddie Wineland got knocked out. You hate to see that happen to a legend, but that was a dope fight if you all missed it. And then, obviously, Julian Erosi getting a knockout win over Nate Landwehr. Did not expect that at all. So, shout out to those two fights on the undercard I wanted to highlight. And also, Ayman Zahabi, brother of Faraz, picking up the win as well. So, moving on to the next card. This Saturday night from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, the heavyweights, the big boys, back again. Not the same ones, but you know what I mean. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Cyril Gane. Damn, dude. This is very rarely do I feel like we get a heavyweight. I'm not sure if prospect fight is the correct terminology to use in a situation like this, because Jairzinho's, I mean, he's a known quantity, sort of. I mean, he only has 5 UFC fights. He's 32, and Gane is 30, which both on the younger side in the heavyweight division. Obviously, Jairzinho 11-1, Gane 7-0. In terms of prospects, man, he's about as good as it's going to get in the heavyweight division. What do you think about this fight, my man?
Matchmaking is great on this. Very big jump up in competition for Cyril. I have no issue with it, right? He's shown a very wide set of tools in his arsenal. And then Jairzinho obviously kind of just bombing, right? He's bombing his way through. Asked for probably one of the only men ever on this earth, and probably the only man that I can think of off the top of my head asking for Ngannou. So much respect for him for doing that. Overall, though, I do like the matchup stylistically. I think it's interesting. I'm curious to see if what Gane does. I wonder if he'll take it down to the ground, maybe, because I feel like that's the most likely thing to do after they saw what Overeem did to Jairzinho for those was almost 5 rounds. He won. Overeem was winning 4 minutes and 50 seconds of that fight, right?
Yeah.
Up until the one hit that ripped his lip. And gave us one of the nastiest, I guess, injuries you can say.
Yeah, in my opinion, the nastiest. At least facial injury. I think we've seen worse. Like for example, Josh Emmett. I think he almost died from what was it? whenever he fought Jeremy Stevens, because I think that he broke his orbital in like 7 different spots and shit like that. So like that, but that didn't look bad at the time.
Well, visual. We'll put it like
visually
visual.
wise, the worst injury I've seen.
Yeah, as far as my pick, I'm going Gone here. It's not that I couldn't see a world where Jairzinho wins it, but I feel like I've seen more out of Cyril as far as tools. I think maybe he does stay to the ground, and that kind of is where he finds success at. Maybe he does some clinch work on the fence, doesn't try to kickbox him a lot. I think will give us a good idea of where his striking's at, because Jairzinho obviously comes from the kickboxing background. So I'm curious to see how that gets tested. I don't think we've even fully seen like all of Jairzinho's striking ability. That's something I like to see more of out of him, because he's like pretty much all his fights outside of the Overeem and the Ngannou fight that he lost, and then the one he won with 10 seconds left. I don't think I got to see his full, like I don't think I've seen his full skill set yet. So that's something I'm really curious to see if maybe they'll come out here with Gane. Obviously Gane is kind of lighter when it comes to heavyweight. He kind of comes in at that 240 mark, right? So that's something, and I think Jairzinho kind of stays heavier, so he kind of comes in like almost at the limit, if not a little under the limit. So I'm just kind of serious. I'm just kind of curious to see how that plays out. I want to see if that's a factor or not. But yeah, that's how I feel about that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go Gane too. I just think he's more like the diverse guy. I like Jairzinho a lot, especially as like a counter fighter. I think he's probably the best counter. I guess I'm not sure how like best pure counter fighter. I guess I'd say at heavyweight. And even like you even saw that in like his loss against Ngannou. Like I remember we laid out like a 10-minute preview on that show. Like we talked for a long time, and then we talked the most about that fight, particular on that 249 card, about everything else. About like he mixes in the kicks, mixes in the counters very well. He can go ahead and stick on the outside. He did all those things. He countered Ngannou like 7 different times when Ngannou was charging on him. Didn't matter. But regardless, he's very good at countering. I still am going to go with Gane just because I think he's more diverse. I like his submission game a lot. And also, he's just a beast, man. In terms of like pure physicality, he's light on his feet. He's 6'6", 240, 81-inch reach. The dude is a pure monster. And obviously, I think you showed that in the JDS fight. I mean, that was a huge step up in competition. He ended up knocking out JDS. I think he's going to end up finishing Jairzinho as well. Regardless, so I think it's going to be a straight-up banger, though, and I'm very much looking forward to it. As far as the co-main, damn, dude, this fight, man. I am more excited for the co-main than I am for the main event. I got to go ahead and say it, man. Magomed Ankalaev, number 11 UFC light heavyweight, 28 years old, out of Russia, 14-1, taking on a big step in competition, taking on the number 8th ranked 28-year-old Nikita Krylov, 26-7. Only 2 fights have ever gone to a decision for him. What do you think about the co-main, man, and who do you got?
Another absolute banger, man, especially at that weight class that for a while there, I mean, it was kind of boring, right? Now this is a nice mix-up of names, and it's just what you want, right? Mm-hmm. As far as my pick, I've kind of gone back and forth on it, but for some reason, I feel like Magomed, man, Ankalaev, like I feel really confident about it. I like Nikita Krylov a lot, but there's just something I like about Magomed. There's just something that I'm just like, for some reason, and something someone said that I thought was very interesting was Krylov on his best day is like a top 5 fighter in the light heavyweight weight class, but on his worst day, he could probably lose to a guy outside of the top 15. Like just outside of the top 15, not like, completely not talented,
Fair enough. I'm going to go Magomed too, man. And I'll be honest with you, I really do think that I don't want to say he is or he isn't. I think he has the potential to go ahead and be the greatest light heavyweight on the planet. I'm talking right now, man. I mean, even in the fight he lost, because he's 14-1. The one loss was to Paul Craig, who's a very good guy, light heavyweight, ranked guy, wins over Shogun, a couple of other good wins as well. He was beating the shit out of Paul Craig up until the literal final second of that fight. And every other fight outside of that has been pure dominance. Knockout win Marcin Progno, domination win over Klidson Abreu, knockout Dachelem Boga. And then he got knocked out knocked out Kutelaba, and then obviously he knocked him out again. I guess TKO and then a knockout. I'm gonna go Magomed. I'm very confident about that one. I think it's gonna be a banger of a fight though. Almost guaranteed for that one to end in a finish. Moving on, what is else on the undercard do you want to talk about on this card?
Oh boy, I think one of my The one I'm looking forward to the most, actually, I got two. I think for me, it's a toss-up between Alex Caceres, Kevin Kroom, and then Alexander Hernandez, Thiago Moises. This is kind of the two big ones I'm kind of back and forth on. I think because Alex is running a 3-fight win streak right here. If he gets to the fourth, maybe he gets a guy right outside of the rankings, the one I was thinking was Mark 1 Amirkhani. Yeah, Mark 1 Amirkhani. Man, yeah. What a name. That was kind of a guy that I like to see him fight. I love Mr. Finland. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah,
right?
We'll keep it like that.
That was kind of a guy that I like to see him fight if he does get the win here. Obviously, Kevin Kroom, though, like a tough dude, right? Like, just comes at you. Good matchup, right? And then Askren Hernandez, man, kind of a guy whose hype got killed off, but is kind of trying to get back to fighting form and kind of put himself in the position he was once at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. There's I mean, those are the kind of fights that Iowa also was going to go ahead and highlight. I think Alex Caceres, Kevin Kroom is just, that's a great fight there. Kevin Kroom looked phenomenal as UFC debut. Alex Caceres, I believe, is on the second longest UFC win streak of his career. It's weird to me that Alex Caceres is only 32, but Bruce Leroy, man, he's been killing it lately. 3 wins in a row. Obviously, he submitted Austin Springer last time out, and that was a damn good win because I believe Austin Springer was the only person, because obviously he was meant to fight Giga Chizudaki. He actually beat Giga Chizudaki, and then he went ahead and ended up submitting Springer, who obviously was the replacement for that fight, taking on Kevin Kroom. That's going to be an awesome fight right there. And then obviously Pedro Munoz, Jimmy Rivera. That's a straight up banger right there. I'm very surprised that's not in the co-main spot, or even that they're putting this on free TV, because that's very much a battle between two top 10, top 5 guys right there. And then also Thiago Moises, Alexander Hernandez should be a banger. Hernandez talking about how he wants to be paid more. I believe he's approaching the end of his deal. That's a little storyline to watch there.
Bellator.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. He's a very talented guy, very, very young too. To be doing kind of the things that he is doing, a lightweight, very, very young. Angela Hill, Ashley Yoder. This fight got added a week ago.
That's crazy.
So that one, they both made weight, pure professionals right there. So yeah, man, it's going to be a very, very fun main card. As far as it goes, I think it's one of the better fight nights we've had all year. Got to go ahead and put that one out there. Yeah, man, are you ready to go ahead and talk about some robberies, my man?
Oh, yeah. Let's get into it.
All right. So this is one of the segments that we talked about last week that I don't think we necessarily talked about it like in depth. But one of the segments we were doing for the show is called the Robbery Rundown or something along those lines. Didn't have an official name for it. But basically, we're going to go ahead and recommend you guys new. We're about to talk about 2 fights. George St. Pierre, Johnny Hendricks, and Diego Sanchez, Ross Pearson. These were 2 of the, I'd say one of the bigger, because we both picked a fight. Angels was GSP, mine was Diego. And they're both considered some of the bigger robberies, I'd say, in MMA history. I think GSP Hendricks is up there in terms of just pure stature. And then mine, Diego versus Ross Pearson, is talked about as the worst MMA robbery of all time. We went ahead and went back and watched both these fights. And we went ahead and scored in both ourselves just to kind of see, were these actually robberies or were just people being upset? We're going to go ahead and start with the much more well-known robbery, or so-called robbery, GSP Johnny Hendricks. Angela, this is your fight, man. Would you go ahead and lay it out for us?
Okay, so I rewatched the fight. I went back and looked at the scorecard. So across the board, it was 48-47 GSP on the first card. Then it was 47-48 Hendricks on the second card. And on the final and third card, making a split decision, it was 48-47 GSP. Therefore, GSP retaining his title and beating Johnny Hendricks. Well, I went back and watched the fight, and originally, I'd watched the fight, and basically the big toss-up round is the round that everybody talks about, the one that makes it the hardest score is round 1. As far as the other rounds, everybody pretty much scored. Round 2, Hendricks unanimously. Round 3, GSP, round 4 Hendricks, and then finally round 5 GSP. The round 1 has been like the end all be all of this card. What I've come to the conclusion of. I've gone online, went on a Reddit and read about this. I went on old articles. I kind of put like genuine thought into it for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole thing was round 1. Originally, when I had scored my card, just to clear it up, I had 2 through 5 the same as everybody else. Round 1, I sat down and watched it in my living room on the big TV screen, and I was like, "Fuck, I can't do this. I don't know who won." And I had a 10-10. Therefore, therefore making it 48-48 on my card. Originally. I rewatched the fight today and gave the round to GSP. I can go back and forth on it, man. Originally, actually, when I first watched it, before I made it 10-10, I had a Hendricks. Then I had a 10-10. And then I had a GSP. So it just goes to show how hard it was for me, too.
Yeah.
It's that first round is almost impossible to score. So if it was a 10-10, I almost feel comfortable saying 10-10 and having a 48-48 a draw. And then I went back and watched it, and I don't know why I scored it for GSP and then had it 48-47. I know you've watched it, right, Josh? Yeah, I know you have an opinion about it.
I have watched this fight many times over the years, just because this is right around the time. This is actually a fan question. I don't want to give too much away, but I got around to the sport around this time when this fight first happened. So I've seen it a couple of times over the years. Obviously, it was UFC. I believe it was 167. Don't quote me on that. In 2013.
Yes, sir.
Damn, nice fact right there by me. I can name like so many UFC events just off the top of my head, just naming like main events. It's one of the pointless information things I have.
Oh, Joe Rogan.
But yeah, man. So I've watched this fight many times over the years, and every single time I've watched it, I've generally come to the conclusion of 48-47 Hendricks. And you're completely right in that it's one of the round one was the entire toss-up round. I actually went ahead and went on to MMAdecisions.com, which in my opinion is one of the most useful websites. And fan scoring has a 52.7% for Hendricks, 41.5% for GSP, and the remaining being a draw. And you can also take it round by round and see how people scored it. It ultimately all comes down to round one, like you said. 53.6% thought Hendricks won it, 41.2% had it for St. Pierre. And then obviously I give it 1, 2, 4 were the unanimous rounds, I'd say, that I went ahead and gave to Hendricks. Do I think it's a robbery? No. My robbery rundown, my final result is going to be a no. Do I think that this is a case similar to a couple of other fights we've seen in MMA over the years, which I think I've talked about this at length, where it's like we don't expect a guy to look good, so whenever they have any modicum of success, we go ahead and over-attribute that fight to them. We over-attribute the success because we didn't expect them to have anything going in. I think that could be a case of in a situation like this. Do I think Hendricks won? Yes. Am I that upset about it? No. I think it's a fight that's reasonably. We should be more angry about how MMA fights are judged than being angry at this result, if that makes any sense. Just because Hendricks did significantly more damage. I feel like he was way more active, so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's like looking at how MMA is judged and putting it through that lens. I'm like, yeah, you could totally give, round 1, round 3, and round 5 to GSP, and you would be completely correct, which is why I don't have an issue with calling it a robbery. That's generally my outlook on it.
I almost would have been happy with just being a draw, honestly, just because of how hard it was to score round 1. Because like we talked about and we repeated, the other rounds were pretty much all around the same for everybody. Everybody kind of had, it was just round 1 that was a variable. And if round 1 would have been a 10-10 round, it would have been a draw, and they probably would have rematched. And then was that the fight? No, GSP fought one more time after that before his retirement, quote unquote, right?
Yeah, he quote unquote, he said he was gonna take time off after that fight, and then he came back to fight Bisping, and then he was done. Yeah.
So that was his last fight before he left. So who knows if that's a draw, right? And then how kind of the course of history goes, right? Does Dana, did they set that up, or does GSP retire at that point, even with the draw?
Dana wanted to do a rematch, and GSP immediately said no, and that he wanted to take time off. And that's why, if you guys have ever seen the clip of Dana basically just trashing GSP at the post-fight press conference, that's where that originates from.
I will say this, Joe. I do feel like Johnny should have got another shot at it, just because of how close the fight was. I do feel more like it was a draw. I did score for GSP, but in a way, I do feel like that round 1 was more of a 10-10 round, just because it was so hard to score.
Fair enough. And I feel like Johnny's a guy that historically really unlucky with its decisions. If you had not told me that, because I had a couple of different fights I wanted to, I'll go ahead and tell you my top 3 for the robbery thing we're doing right now. One of them was Hendricks versus Robbie Baller 2. That shit was really bad. And Hendricks has been on the wrong side of a couple of those. I remember thinking he also beat Neil Magny, and that ended up being a decision loss for him as well. He's been on the wrong side of a couple of those, in my opinion. And obviously, another one I'm not going to talk about was a recent fight that, I talked about a lot on the show, which was a robbery, but I'm not even going to get into that one. So, yeah, man, I feel like Hendricks has kind of gotten screwed over a lot over the years.
You know what I thought was funny in that fight? At the start, you know how Joe kind of lays out the picture of each guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts talking about Johnny Hendricks. He's like, it almost seems like he has something else in his hands. And I thought that shit was so funny because, after what happened with, you saw it and all that, I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, and generally everybody thinking Johnny was on steroids is I feel like that's part of the reason why people don't really care that he got robbed, because people were really mad in the moment, but less and less people have cared over the years.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and move on to mine now. This one, in my opinion, look, we call a lot of fights robberies. I feel like we've us on the show we're victims of the moment, and that's partly why I wanted this segment, is just because it's fun to look back on these fights, because GSP Hendricks was talked about at the time as being one of the biggest robberies ever in MMA. I saw some people were talking about it like, yeah, I stopped watching MMA after that. Like it's a people talk about it like it was a boxing level situation. It was not. Boxing's pretty much rigged. So depending on who you're fighting. This fight we're about to talk about next, Diego Sanchez versus Ross Pearson, I believe also in 2014, UFC Fight Night 42, June 7th, my birthday, 2014. This fight is the worst decision in MMA history. I know I'm giving it away by talking about this, but it's one of those ones where it's like, whenever we talk about robberies, I feel like I want to point back to this fight to show what a true robbery actually is. So, real quick, I'll go ahead and say my piece, since obviously this was my fault. I'll throw it back to you, Angel. I went ahead and brought the stats a moment ago from MMA decisions. MMA decisions for this fight, obviously, last time it was a 50-40 situation, and 10% kind of being in the draw. 95.8% of people thought Ross Pearson won this fight. Say it again, 95.8%. 3% went to Diego, and the other 1% or so was a draw. Going round by round. Round 1, 91% Pearson. Round 2, 92% Pearson. Round 3, 93% Pearson. Diego got knocked down twice in this fight. And it's the worst decision in MMA history. I rewatched it again today because it's been at least a couple of years. At one point, when I first got into the sport, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and watch through just a shitload of fights. UFC Fight Pass. I remember back a couple of years ago, I was trying to lose a lot of weight, so I watched at least 1,000 fights during that time. I was just running on the treadmill watching fights. This is one of those fights where I watched once, I was like, damn, that shit made me mad. I want to watch it again. This is my first time watching it in at least a couple of years, and it still stands out. It's the worst decision in MMA history. Angel, am I being over dramatic, or what were your thoughts on the fight? Because I believe this would have been the first time you watched it. Am I correct?
No, I actually didn't watch it. This is actually. But I have heard of I've heard of the controversy behind this fight. I tell you that right now.
Okay.
So I am aware of it. I've heard of the comments, and then just from the picture we were laying out, and generally MMA Decisions has some pretty smart people on there. So the fact that those numbers are what they are, kind of puts it into perspective.
Oh, one more thing about that fight. Speaking of MMA Decisions, only one of the media members even gave Sanchez a round. Nobody had him winning. GSP was the same story. Every single media member had it 48-47, but at least that's a close situation. One person, Chase Raymond from BJPenn.com, gave it 29-28. Yeah, and just real quickly, taking a look at the fight stats, Pearson, he was winning 41% of his strikes. He went 51 for 122. He's got one knockdown, one takedown. Diego went 33 of 134 for 24%, and he shot for one takedown and did not end up getting it. Taking a round by round strike stats, Diego got outstruck in every single round. Only round 2 was kind of close, where he got outstruck by 4 strikes. It's the worst decision in my history. So that's why I want to talk about this segment, just because I feel like we talk about robberies a lot, and sometimes we're victims of the moment. And There was another fight I was going to bring up for this, which I guess I said I was going to say it earlier. John Jones, Dominic Reyes, which I talk about a lot in this show, as being one of the worst robberies I've seen. Even I sometimes am a victim of the moment, and where I'm just overreact. That I overreacted to, because sometimes I just need to go back and watch this fight, and it gives me a clear head as to, holy shit, that was a terrible decision. But I mean, yeah, man. Is there anything else you want to talk about on these sort of fights, or even the idea of a robbery in general before we move on?
It all comes back to criteria, right? Because I could have scored the fight, right? But did I follow the criteria of the UFC or whatever it is, or whoever, not the UFC, but what is it? It's the states,
Athletic
right?
Commission.
Yeah, the state athletic commissions, right? And kind of that. It kind of goes back to that. That's also another thing, the whole scoring system, right? Because I'm sure that could be something else you can argue for. I don't know. It's something, and then it's such a hard thing to do in the moment too, right? Because in the moment, someone can freak out and be like, something, I don't know, I'm gonna pick this person, right? Because that could realistically happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's definitely happened multiple times on a fight card where a judge has been like, something, I don't have too much time to think about it. Next round's about to start. Bam, this is who I think is going to do it. You don't really have time to recall it. By the end of the fight, you can't think about what happened in round one and round, because so much crazy shit happened. But whatever, yada yada yada. There was a cut, not a cuck. There's a cut, or a groin strike or whatever. Something
could have been that one
fight.
too, though.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that too, right? It's just such a hard thing to do, I sometimes I do shit on the judges. We both do a lot, but it is generally a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and it can be a tough thing to do. But what do you think is the solution to that? Because I know we've talked about this. We talked about this with Sam Alvey was actually, I think, who we talked about this with, about how judging criteria needs to be fixed and what the answer is. What do you think the answer actually is in a situation like this? Is it because, taking a look at the judging criteria, I'm like, I think they got it down, man. I think, because they value damage, they value these things over. I don't think too many people have actually read the judging criteria, which I think leads to a lot of issues. And I think it'd be interesting to get, an actual judge on this show, just to go ahead and talk to them about why fights happen and decisions happen. Particularly one from Kansas, because I've covered a lot of Invicta fights, which we can talk about Invicta in a minute. Just some news just came out about them. And I've seen some pretty terrible decisions in person. A lot of them. In fact, way more than I can count. I'd say at least half of the main events I've covered live have had a terrible decision behind it. But that's besides the point. So yeah, man, is it just the judging criteria in general, or do you think it's just that we have too many bad judges in the system for it to be successful?
I think if you get the criteria down, I think the issue is the people who are doing the judging. It's not necessarily bad judging, which I know that I'm wording this kind of weirdly, but it's the people who are doing the judging, right? Because they have these people who are boxing judges doing MMA judging, and you can't really. I don't think there should be a crossover, in my opinion. You judge one sport or the other. Do you think I could be a tennis judge if I'm judging boxing?
I mean, they're also very different sports.
They're also very different. But isn't MMA very different from boxing too?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, and it's just the truth, that's just how I feel about it. I think that's one of the big things. And then I've also had some crazy ideas too as of having more judges. Why does it only have to be 3 judges?
Yeah, I think having 5 could probably be a nice spot.
That's what I was thinking too.
But at the same time, there's an argument of if we're having 3 bad judges, who's to say that adding 2 more will
make it worse? Yeah, it will make it worse. That's also the other issue. But granted, though, if we have 5 great judges,
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah,
but it goes both ways.
Also, it's it's a state by state thing, dude. That's the other issue. It's different in every state, right? We don't have.
I believe it's not necessarily different by every state, I think, but the issue is that there's 2 rule sets that are generally cut in half. Most states have, there's 2 different sets of rules, and some of them go by this set, and the other ones go by this set. So it does create some issues.
Yeah, we can't do that either. We just gotta have one set, one thing. That's how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think it's a combination of issues overall. Yeah. So, as far as blatant corruption though, I think that we are better than boxing because
it's never been that criminal.
It's never been that criminal. I mean,
no, it's never been that criminal. I don't think I've seen in my short time watching MMA. What is it now? 5-6 years now. I don't even know how long it's been. Maybe it might be less than that. I don't think I've ever seen a criminal decision like that in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's never been that bad. But which we'll talk about because I mean we gotta talk about Canelo in a little bit, so obviously that's gonna be a fun conversation with judging as always. But I don't think that won't matter for this fight.
I will say this though: the one thing with boxing is there is 12 rounds in boxing too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's harder to score. But like, I mean, in terms of like pure like bad judging, it's by far the worst.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, man. In terms of like moving on from this judging conversation and kind of moving on to like the news section. Sage Northcutt's next fight just got announced. And he's facing, because you guys don't know, this guy's bad motherfucker, Shinya Aoki at welterweight for some reason. In case you guys don't know, Shinya Aoki is probably the most underrated lightweight of all time. He's arguably the best jiu-jitsu, I guess, lightweight of all time. I guess, like, not to sound repetitive.
But Josh, what about Royce Gracie?
Shit, what weight class did Royce technically fight at?
I don't know. Probably not. There was no weight classes back then.
Not back then. But
open weight.
He fought Matt Hughes at 175, a catch weight, I think, or 170. I don't remember if he made weight for that.
And then they also fought Frank Shamrock, right, at Bellator.
Oh yeah, he fought Ken at light heavyweight, but they were both under light heavyweight.
Was it Ken?
They just needed a weight class to put on there. I think he weighed into like 190 something.
Oh god.
Yeah, dude, that was a shit show. That's my favorite card of all time. Bellator 130. I don't know. Bellator.
Was that the one with Kimbo?
Yeah, Kimbo Dada, friend of the podcast, Dada 5000. That one's not a joke. We should get him on sometime. He's a fucking interview and a half, dude. But regardless, yeah. Kimbo Dada and then Ken Royce. Those are the back-to-back. That was the most insane shit I've ever seen.
You love to see it.
But yeah, man. So obviously, Shinya Aoki's going to be taking on Sage Northcutt. Sage back for the first time in 3 years. And
holy shit, it's been that long?
Yeah, Shinya and
Shinya, they broke his face, but
he did literally break his face.
Shout out Cosmo.
Yeah, shout out Cosmo, dude. I said this like on Instagram. They must hate this kid, dude. I'm not sure what he did, but he pissed somebody off. Because Shinya Aoki, obviously we know Cosmo Alexander is an amazing kickboxer, huge knockout power, undefeated in MMA, I believe. Aoki, dude, one of the greatest lightweights of all time, wins over Eddie Alvarez, Kawajiri, Rich Clemente, Antonio McKee, like Sakuraba, Edward Foiling, like, and a bunch of other ones, just like George Stephanopoulos, like just a couple of other dudes like that you heard in like the mid 2000s, like Cal Unos, dudes like that. He doesn't have the most stacked resume, but in my opinion, he's the most underrated lightweight of all time. I put him in the lightweight GOAT conversation, like in the top 10, just because I don't think he's very beatable by a whole lot of guys. Now that being said, is in terms of MMA super prospects, very rarely do they come along. Sage was going to be one of those guys. Is it almost like disappointing to see this happen to his career? Because I'd bet the house on Shinya Aoki beating the shit out of Sage Northcutt.
I think the one thing he got going for him is at least that Shinya's been knocked out a lot recently, or not a lot, but a couple of times recently, which is the one thing he has going for him. Because at least if he knows it doesn't get to the ground, he has like a chance. But yeah, that's the one thing he has at least running on his side.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I mean, in terms of just like, one's been killing it though with a lot of their stuff recently. They just announced John Lineker. John Lineker's going to be on that same card. One on TNT 4. And like we talked about when they first announced that one championship was going to TNT and it was going to be on the same night as AEW and so on and so forth. I was like, you know what, man, they're killing it. Obviously, they got DJ going on. Like, he's coming back. They got a bunch of amazing fights coming up.
I think that's all in that same month. I think they have DJ, Eddie, and Sage all in the same month, don't they?
Yeah, and John Lineker and a couple of other dudes as well. So, Yeah, man, it's gonna be an awesome night. But dude, that's not only the only. It's a fun time for MMA, dude. Like it's an awesome time to be an MMA fan because PFL just announced their schedule, and talk about like as far as like the first main event of PFL, I guess it'd be season 4, I think. Season 3 or season 4. Anthony Pettis moving over there, which I don't think we talked about at the time. But he's moving over there and he's taking on Clay Collard. What is kind of your interest level in PFL as of right now? Because for me, it's like weird to see because they have a weird mismatch of like kind of good UFC dudes who are moving over and making the trip over, like Fabricio and Anthony Pettis, and then these kind of like dudes who there's not a whole lot of interest in, but they're making a name for themselves over in the PFL. What are your thoughts on them as of right now as a promotion?
I've had some interest, never cared to watch. I am this year, or try to keep up with it somewhat because of Anthony and obviously Fabricio making the move over. And someone that I actually want to watch who they have is Lance Palmer, who's their champ. I know he's a special guy. I think he'd be a really fun guy to have in the UFC. That's kind of the big thing. And obviously Muhammad Usman is part of their roster. And obviously they signed Clarissa Shields, dude.
They did. She's not fighting though. That's next season. She's busy still in fighting in boxing, taking on some girl whose name I've already forgotten on pay-per-view in a couple of weeks. So that's going down.
So yeah, I do have some interest. It's not as much as, I'll put it like this. If I had to watch another promotion that wasn't the UFC and PFL was my option, PFL wouldn't be my first option, if I'll be 100% honest with you.
What would be your first option?
Probably Bellator.
Fair enough.
Bellator, then after that, I'd probably say one, if not, probably ACB or ACA.
That's bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely go ahead and probably say Bellator as well. But it'd be a competition because I was a big Bellator fan for a long time, but I feel like they kind of faltered as of recently.
Well, I don't know. I feel like they kind of had a resurgence right now, though.
I think I'm biased because I dislike the constant switching of networks, which just looks like instability to me. But moving to Showtime, I think they're going to be better now.
I think they have a home.
Scott Coker also, like, he had a good thing going with Showtime before Strikeforce got bought out, which I think that's going to help as well.
Yeah, I think they're going to be stable for a long time. I think this is good for them.
Yeah, man. So as far as that goes, it's going to be fun to watch PFL this year. That being said, obviously UFC still going to be king. But there's some promotions on the rise. But outside of that, do you got anything else we talk about before moving into some fan questions?
I mean, we got, we kind of have this open segment here. You kind of just talking about just everything. There's something I actually wanted to bring up to you.
Yeah.
That I didn't bring up to you when we talked originally. So you remember how, was it the start of the year or was it the end of last year? We talked about our awards. Mm-hmm. And I didn't talk about too much about this at the time, but I thought you had a genuinely interesting reaction to this. When I named Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira as one of my Fight of the Year nominees.
I was a little bit surprised.
Were you surprised?
Yeah.
It was one that was pretty out there, but I genuinely thought it was a great fight.
No, it was for sure a great fight, and I got to be honest with you, man. Glover being screwed is really it's drawing me out of the main event next week or 2 weeks. Is it next week? Yeah.
Yeah, it's next week. Yeah.
Yeah, it's drawing me a little bit out just because I can't help but think, damn, Glover's really getting screwed right now, man. Because I'm sure they're going to make him fight somebody too. Like they're either going to make him fight some big contender, or they're going to end up just having Izzy fight John right next. You know what I mean?
Probably. I mean, we've talked about time and time again how they fucked Glover over. We don't have to get into that too much. Whoever he fight, I mean, honestly, they'll probably give him the winner of Dominic and Yuri, knowing them. I could see that happening. Just because, UFC's like, well, fuck you, fight one more time,
One more time. It'll all be good, man.
Why not? And then kind of staying on that same conversation, we didn't talk about this too much at the time. I kind of want to come back to it just because now we kind of are in a weird spot when it comes to the lightweight division, but I mean, are we still kind of convinced? Is Dustin still the greatest lightweight on the planet right now, outside of Khabib?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's just here's my framework of looking at it, right? Um, just taking a quick look at the division. I think the only other person I'd actually say that you can make it make it like the comparison for would probably be Charles Oliveira. And I think Poirier beats him. Now, do I think that their guys can beat Poirier? Yes, I'd actually probably pick Michael Chandler just because whenever you're fighting at a division like that, where it's like that's like the pure mix of speed and power, right? Like that's probably the best combination of dudes that have power, speed, athleticism, so on and so forth. 155 is where it kind of tops out. As you move up the division, dudes get slower. They do have more power, but they kind of they're slower, so on and so forth. You move down, there's less power, but they're more fast. 155 is kind of the perfect benchmark. Michael Chandler is the best and fastest dude in that division in terms of hand speed, in terms of actual power. He hits like a truck. The dude knocked out Dan Hooker, and nobody knocks out Dan Hooker. And Dustin Poirier is very, very hittable, and he's been through a lot of wars. I'd probably pick Michael Chandler if those two fought again. Not fought again. If they were to go ahead and fight after Dustin and Conor fight again, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I think that's a thing that's going to happen no matter what. I think those guys are going to fight no matter like by the end of their UFC careers, Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier will have fought at least one time.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. Dustin has this weird opposition to fighting him. I'm not sure if you saw like the post-fight stuff after Conor and Dustin fought, but he seemed really opposed to actually fighting him. I don't know why, but
he's afraid, man. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, man, I think Dustin's still the best lightweight on the planet. I think he should be champ right now. I thought it was
Probably.
really stupid that they did not have that fight as a
Sort of love to see Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier the rematch for the belt. It just sucks that obviously he fought Khabib and lost, and then obviously he didn't have a fight after that. That would have been so easy. That would have been so fucking easy. I'm so fucking heartbroken about that.
Yeah, it would have been really easy.
It would have been such a good fight too. Dude, I love Oliveira as far as he's just an interesting matchup. I think that's kind of where my love comes from. I was super high on him after that Kevin Lee win. Then Tony win just cemented it. Just seeing Tony not tap, I thought Tony should have tapped. Tony probably fucked up his arm. Did we ever get any kind of medical confirmation on that?
No, I don't think we have any confirmation. One quick thing though, you mentioned Tony. Where does he go from here? Because in terms of actual listen, he was on one of the most amazing stretches we've seen in a long time. I don't think we'll see another guy like that, especially lightweight, for a long time. I mean, obviously excusing Khabib because he did the same exact thing. But where does he go from here? Just because he's one of those more interesting guys at lightweight where he's very clearly past his prime. But what do you do with him? Just because it's
and he wants to be competitive too.
Yeah, so I mean, but at the same time, it's like, who would you put him in there with next?
I don't know, dude. I don't like him fighting anybody else. Honestly, I'd rather see him fight Nick Diaz or Nate Diaz. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
Dude, Nate Diaz sounds like a baller fight.
Those sounds like fun fights. Those are bad dudes that I think would make a fun fight.
Nate Tony at 170? Oh my god, dude.
Banger,
well, and Tony
right?
said he'd do it at 172 because.
Actually, can we do this right now? What's your fantasy card? Just fuck it. People from the past, right? Or actually, not from the past. We'll make it somewhat realistic. Timelines kind of work out, right? I'll give you mine. Mine's Izzy Jones, Habib GSP, and then Henry Cejudo DJ, just to have 3 title fights.
Well, we'll go ahead and throw 2 more in there if we're gonna go ahead and
fuck.
Yeah, we're doing a main card.
Ooh. Give me a second.
I can go ahead and give you a couple. I can give you mine real quick.
Okay, hold up. Let's do.
You're shell shocked, you know.
I'll think about my other 2 while you go ahead.
Scrub. All right, I want to go main event, bro. You've got to do Fedor versus Brock.
I was thinking Fedor, but I couldn't think against who. I'll do Fedor Stipe. Fuck it.
Fedor Stipe. Fedor. Listen, man. I've been long on the stance that Fedor is the GOAT. And it's one of those things if you were not there, man, if you were not even there for because I was watching MMA right on the tail end of Fedor's prime. If you were not there, you won't get it. And it's one of those things where it's looking at just his resume, it does not do it justice. He's beaten more UFC champions than a guy like Stipe has. You know what I mean? For example, and he's never fought in the UFC. Like, just the pure dominance at heavyweight. At heavyweight, dude. That's why it's so insane. Because people are like, oh, Stipe's the GOAT. Stipe got knocked out by Stefan Struve. Not saying it's a slight against him, but at heavyweight in your prime, you will lose a couple times just because those dudes have so much power. He also got knocked out by DC. You know what I mean? Like, he's lost a couple of fights. Fedor in his prime. And I know this is not meant to go off into a GOAT conversation because I'm going to get my fancy card in a minute, but every single time.
Oh, we got to talk about that, by the way. I had that on my topic list at some point.
Yeah, every single time people shit on Fedor, it kind of pisses me off. It's like, the guy was undefeated. He had a doctor stoppage 17 seconds into a fight in 2000, right? He was unbeaten for the next 10 years. He went 31-0. He knocked out Brett Rogers, Andre Arlovsky, Tim Sylvia, Matt Lindland, Mark Hunt, Mark Coleman twice, Crow Cop, Nogueira twice, Randleman, Goodridge, Fujita, Heath Herring, Sammy Schilt, Ricardo Arona. And then even after he went off near the end of his prime, he would lose 3 straight fights near the end in Strikeforce. He would beat Jeff Monson, Satoshi Ishii, Pedro Hizzo, Fabio Maldonado, Frank Mir, Chael Sonnen, and just knocked out Rampage in 2019. The dude's a legend. So I'm going Fedor Brock in the main event. Brock gets smashed, but it's a fight I wanted to see back in 2010.
Fuck it, right?
So, yeah. And then gonna go ahead and, like, co-main events.
Ooh, yeah, there we go. I forgot that was only your first one, man. You laid that out good, Josh.
I did, didn't I? Brock, I don't have to do any explanation for.
It's fucking Brock Lesnar. What else do you want?
Exactly. So we're going to go ahead and go co-main event. This is an interesting dream fight for me. Not because I think there's a whole lot of competitiveness here. I don't know who wins it. I want to see, like, I tried to make mine realistic, right? This one's not very realistic.
I thought mine were somewhat realistic, right?
Yeah, no, this one's not realistic at all for me. I'm saying. I want to see Prime Vanderlei taking on Prime Jones. Vanderlei Silva.
Oh, I forgot to say, dude, my Izzy Jones one would be a heavyweight, by the way.
The Vanderlei from, like, 2006, right before he got knocked out by Hendo. Well, I guess getting knocked out by Crow Cop kind of sent him down that spiral. And, like, I think that was 05. So yeah, Vanderlei, when he was sitting around like 210 pure pounds of 210 pounds of pure muscle, just a complete monster. Vanderlei Silva in Pride during his prime is the scariest fighter to ever exist, and you cannot change my mind on that. The dude's nickname was the Axe Murderer, and like he actually he looks like he could have killed people, dude. Like, at one point he was before he got knocked out by Crow Cop, he was 31-5. Only losses to Mark Hunt, Ricardo Arona, which he then, he would go in to avenge that loss. Tito Ortiz, Vitor, and then one of his first losses to a guy I can't remember back in 1997. But it wasn't until he hit Pride in 2000 where he really got into his prime. Beat Hendo, Sakuraba 3 times. I'm not sure who Sakuraba pissed off to have him fight Vanderlei 3 times. He had a draw with Crow Cop, beat Rampage twice, so on and so forth. Fujita. That's a dream fight for me, right? And then John Jones, no explanation needed. I think Jones would win that fight, but holy shit, can you just imagine that one for a second? Like, that would be pretty insane. For especially the first 2 rounds, Jones would be in a lot of trouble, I think. But that being said, moving on. This is where it starts to get tough, just because there's a couple of like fights you can go ahead and throw in there, because those are like the two top ones for me. And now that like I'm kind of thinking about it more and more, I'm like a little bit conflicted. But I'm gonna go Bisping Yoel Romero, just because I really want to see that fight.
Micah.
And by the way, dude, like that's a fight where like people love to shit on Bisping. That's a very winnable fight for him. I'm not saying I'd pick him, but like
with 2 eyes or 1 eye.
Well, 1 eye Bisping was the best Bisping, by the way. Like,
I've heard that. I've heard some stat about it. Funny enough.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, he lost. Started to lose visibility whenever he got knocked out by Vitor. Following that, he went on the best stretch of his career. Knocked out Rockhold, beat Hendo, so on and so forth. Beat Silva. If we're talking like
medically cleared, isn't that crazy?
If we match up the Bisping from like 199 against the Yoel from 205, that'd be like. UFC 205, I mean. That'd be insane. So that's one of them right there. That's just a fight I've always wanted to see. It makes me really sad they did not do it before he retired. But yeah, man, I mean, those are my top 3, and now you can go ahead and go with your final 2, and then I'll go with my final 2.
Yeah, no, I want to do Fedor. I think Fedor or anybody in the UFC. I just want to see Fedor fight someone or someone in the UFC, right? In his better years, you know what I mean? Fuck. Actually, let's do like a prime Fedor and a prime Kane.
See, that one's interesting because Kane is very disrespected in the heavyweight GOAT conversation.
A lot of people have DC has him as a GOAT.
Yeah, and I think prime Kane's the second best heavyweight of all time.
Just the injuries.
Yeah, the injuries, and I think he beats DC. I think he beats Stipe. Man, it makes me so mad that we did not get to see Stipe.
Kane could beat a lot of people. I would pick Kane against a lot of people. I would pick Kane against a lot of people today.
Dude, same here. It makes me really sad that he only fought Ngannou and then retired. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he could have. Like, there were so many other fights.
And granted, he wasn't in his best moments either.
No, but at the same time, like, he lost to Ngannou, and Ngannou's like, this is the best stretch of Ngannou's career right now. Like, if they could,
we don't know where Ngannou's going to be by the end of his career either.
Exactly. But man, like, I would have picked Kane against so many dudes. I think Fedor beats him just because, like, Fedor in his prime is the best combination of everything. Like, the best pure wrestler. Like, he could wrestle with the best of them. He had the best jiu-jitsu. Like, he would outstrike the strikers, like, against Crow Cop, you know what I mean? And then he would jiu-jitsu the jiu-jitsu guys like Nogueira. He would go ahead and wrestle better than Coleman at the time, who was the best wrestler at heavyweight. And he also had an amazing gas tank, too. So I'd pick him. I think I'd probably pick Fedor just via stoppage, but at the same time, it'd be an insane fight.
Yeah, I guess we'll get into mine a little bit more since you talked about yours. Another one that I had was Julia Budd, Ronda Rousey. Ex-teammate. I swear to God, Josh. I think that it's like one of those crazy ones, but I know it doesn't make any sense, right? But it just sounds interesting, right? Okay. They're both in the Olympics, both judo. As far as MMA, I'm curious what would happen. I know Amanda Nunes, Julia Budd would be more of a fantasy, but for some reason I'd rather have the Ronda one. It's kind of out there, but it's because I know it would literally be impossible to make. That's the main reason I love to see. And plus, that Ronda retired, right? DJ and Henry Cejudo, I mean, probably the two, greatest guys in their weight class right now as it stands, right? DJ, one of the greatest, right? Or the greatest. Some people have him as the greatest. Henry, one of the greatest athletes to ever be in the UFC, right? I think that's obviously we don't know who's, their whole retirement thing is like, kind of in the air, right? Revived the division, according to him. GSP Habib is kind of one that I was just kind of like, I would love to see what would happen, right? I think it's more of a what if rather than a fantasy. You know what I mean? I think that's the big thing for me. And then Jones, it's just kind of the hype that's right now around it, right? Because Jones, obviously, another guy who's goated. Izzy, another guy who's putting himself in a, by the end of his career, he could be putting himself in that same conversation. And if he wins the title here, and then the reason I say it's a heavyweight is, hypothetically speaking, what if Jones wins the heavyweight title? And hypothetically speaking, what if Izzy wins that light heavyweight title? And Izzy wants to go for a third title. I think there's just that fantasy is something crazy.
Yeah, and there were a couple of fights you mentioned there, and I was thinking Rousey won, Julia Budd won. That's interesting.
That went through for a loop, but I thought it was cool in my head.
No, I mean I would agree with that. And in terms of Rousey, dude.
And then on my prelim, Josh.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
One of my prelim. I want Pride Felony Charles Bennett.
Oh, man.
Versus Mike Perry. The battle of the insane.
Holy shit, that'd be incredible.
Dude, the shit talk. Can you imagine?
That's actually, not to expose my final two real quickly, but that was one of my final two was Crazy Horse against Vanderlei. It makes me really upset that Rizin did not do that when they both had both of them on the roster. And like in 2015, whenever Crazy Horse knocked out Felony, knocked out Vanderlei's buddy, who he was like his protege, and then got on the mic and said a phrase I can't say on air, that he runs fast. I'm really upset they did not do that fight. I'm really upset they didn't do it because they both wanted it, and it's Japan. They could have done it open weight. You know what I mean?
It, right?
But yeah, dude, that's a guy. Low-key, that's a guy I really thought about reaching out to for episode 100 because I have him on Snapchat.
He probably would have said yes.
I don't know that he would have because I don't know, but he's lost like 10 straight fights.
Oh yeah, dude, he has more losses than wins now. It's kind of heartbreaking.
It's kind of heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's like,
He's
yeah,
a
that
legend,
sounds
though.
like him.
He's a legend, not like
He's
a
just-
legend for being,
No, but he's a legend of the game, dude. He's the
a
type of
legend.
guy that like
Yeah.
we'll never see again.
Who's the equivalent? I'd say like a legend like Joe Lozon, right? Like Joe Lozon has been there from the beginning, right?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
A legend of the game, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I would have loved to see that. That'll be I'm gonna go and put that one on my prelims too. I'll go and stack that one on the prelim.
Ooh.
And then my two other dream fights. I gotta go. You mentioned Rousey. I gotta go Rousey Cyborg just because thinking of what would have happened in Strikeforce before Rousey started to fall more in love with her striking. Whenever she was just pure, I'm gonna take your ass down. I'm gonna submit you. There's gonna be nothing you can do about it. Prime Rousey is the most underrated and also overrated fighter in MMA history. Because in her prime, everybody was like, dude, she could beat men. Like she wasn't gonna do it. People were saying it, and nowadays she's just shit on because of how she exited the sport. But dude, she was so good. Like especially in Strikeforce in those early UFC days before, like I said, UFC pre-UFC 190. Whenever she was just amazing in the clinch, she was so great in terms of control and actually like using all of her weight to go ahead and shift into positions and so on and so forth. And just her submission game was so great, dude. And I would have loved to see her against Cyborg back in like 2010, 2011. I'm not sure who I would have picked because Rousey started off as a featherweight. That's something that's interesting. And she ended up moving down whenever she joined Strikeforce. And I get why Rousey didn't fight her. She was like, yeah, you know what? You were on steroids. You built yourself up. If you want to go and build yourself up using steroids, you can go ahead and lose some weight and cut down to 135. And Cyborg was like, no, that's not fair. So that's why that fight didn't happen. So yeah, man. And then my final fight. You mentioned Joe Lozon. I gotta go Joe Lozon, BJ Penn. That fight should have happened back in 2007 whenever Lozon knocked out Jens Pulver. Do I think Lozon would have won? No. But Joe Lozon never fighting for UFC title, getting shafted out of it twice is the saddest thing to me. Like it's one of the things that like never like it should have happened he should have happened twice, right? He should have gotten after he beat Jens because Jens got a title shot after losing to Joe Lozon for getting knocked out by Joe.
Jens was a champion too.
Yeah, and then he ended up he should have gotten a title shot after he submitted. Oh man, I feel really stupid for forgetting his name right now. Oh my god, I feel so dumb. He was on a complete tear. It was like in the UFC 140s. He had like the kind of like the Kevin Randleman look going on where like he dyed his hair like yellow like in tribute. Melvin Gillard. I feel so stupid it took me so long. But Melvin Gillard was on a tear at the time. And like if Melvin won, he was gonna get a title shot. Joe ended up getting screwed. Joe Lowe's on BJ Penn 2007. Book it. At the time, Joe would have been, I think he was 16-3. He started off his UFC career 3-0. If he beat Kenny Florian, he would have gotten the title shot back in like 2008. But he should have never had to fight Florian to even get it. So whatever, man. That's my top 5 for like my fantasy card.
Dude, I think we had some pretty sick cards.
We do. We had some pretty sick cards on there.
Dude, I wanted to ask you again.
Yeah.
Like, so you talked about Fedor being the GOAT. You know, I was listening to Lex. You know who Lex Friedman is?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah, so he had Ryan Hall on his podcast, and I was listening to that. And they both asked, and Lex Friedman's a freshman, by the way, just to put this into perspective.
Okay.
But he also asked Ryan Hall. He's like, "Who do you think the GOAT is?" And Ryan's like, "I personally think it's Fedor."
My man.
Not Ryan said that. Lex said that, and then Ryan's like, "I agree with you." So, and you shared this to me privately, where you think Fedor is the GOAT. I don't know if you still stand with that. I'm just kind of curious if we're still with that.
Yeah, I think I just said that I think Fedor is still the GOAT.
I know you talked about. I know you mentioned it, but we've also had the conversation of like weight class GOATs and then just general. That's why I wanted to bring it up again.
For me, I'm somebody who values peak performance over longevity, and I think that's something that's interesting to me because my my top 3 GOATs, if I probably had to go, for me the big 2 have always been Fedor and DJ. I think DJ is the most well-rounded mixed martial artist ever in MMA. Full stop. And his resume is pretty good. It's missing some of the bigger names that like someone like Jones has, but Jones at the same time, like there's issues with his resume. You know what I mean? Like he fought, his best wins are guys that were former 185ers who moved up, or guys like Shogun who were on the edge of moving out of their prime and were getting older. He's also significantly bigger than a lot of the guys he's been fighting. He popped for roids 3 times, more than 3, but you know what I mean. And then there's other issues with guys like that too. For me, like DJ and Fedor are the big two in terms of not having a whole lot of issues at the resume. You can argue, yeah, Fedor lost a couple times, less losses than GSP. Oh, but yeah, he was fighting in Pride, never do it on steroids. Less failed drugs tests than Jones. Oh, but he never fought in the UFC. More wins over championship level fighters than GSP. You know what I mean? It goes on and on.
Would you have like a non-PED list and a PED list? Like would Anderson Silva be in? Would Silva be in that?
No, I hate that idea because I think if we're doing that, then we're not acknowledging that up until 2015, I think it was 2015, excuse me. The entire sport was just a dead zone for like a drug testing. I mean, you got 2 drug tests, one before the fight on the week of, and one after, right after you fight. That was all that happened. And if we do that pre and post, like pre-USADA, like not necessarily pre-USADA, but like a PED list and a non-PED list, you're just kind of like not acknowledging that the sport's been dirty as fuck for 90% of its tenure. So that's why I dislike.
Right, though we're only a quarter into the sport, of its whole life period.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I'll go ahead and acknowledge that, like, yeah, Jones has some marks off on me because I know he used PEDs, but I'm not gonna like make a whole separate list because I don't rank Jones that highly anyways in terms of GOAT conversation. Like, yeah, he's never lost, but it's the same thing of Floyd never lost. You know what I mean? Like, I don't rank Floyd in my top 3 or top 5 GOATs in boxing.
Yeah, but I agree with you on that. Definitely. I don't mean to cut you up, but yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, like he has the undefeated thing, but the resume and how he got those wins is not as important to me as somebody like Fedor, who in his prime it went like, yeah, I'm gonna go fight in Pride because Pride has the toughest dudes there, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, or like Anderson being like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and. Well, I guess Anderson's probably not the best example because he also failed drug tests multiple times. But
as I say, that's why I talked about Anderson a second ago. But what is it called? And obviously now that Habib is quote unquote retired, how high do you have Habib on there?
Man, see, that's the thing, right? I think
my issue will always be the title defenses with Habib.
Yeah, for sure.
But granted, he beat a lot of people on the way up, right? So
he beat a lot of people on the way up. He cleared out the division by the time he ended up winning the belt, sort of, like to a degree. Once I'd say.
My thing is with him, and I don't mean to cut you off again, my bad.
No,
but as far for me, greatest of all time to me means as far as first of all the performances are there, right? The stats are there, and then your longevity, and then kind of your meaningness to the sport, right? Greatest of all time. I've talked about this when I talk about Jordan and LeBron. I say LeBron's the best player I've ever seen, without a doubt. But Jordan is the greatest who has ever played the game. And people are so puzzled by this idea that, well, why isn't LeBron the GOAT? No, LeBron is amazing. LeBron is probably the second best player of all time in my eyes, right? Or best player.
He has to be number 2 in my opinion.
He has to be number 2 without a doubt. There's no one who the only person who could probably touch him is Kareem, because Kareem played.
I think you make a case for Kobe too.
You can make it. I have my opinions about Kobe. I'll put it like that.
Okay, fine.
I know that hurts a lot of people, but
he's not even a top 10 Laker. What are we talking
about? No. We don't got a meme about that right now. Kobe's one of those weird guys who he's so weird to put in there because I rate a lot of guys over him, and that's such a crazy thing to say. But I really like, and we're not gonna get into basketball right now. But it's going back to how I agree. It's just like greatness and being the best are 2 different things to me. I know that sounds so weird, but it really genuinely are. Because I think Fedor is greater than Habib to me. DJ is greater than Habib to me. Even when Habib is probably one of the best to ever do it, those other 2 guys have what I call genuine greatness.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And as far as GOAT conversation, the issue is entirely with Habib that he doesn't have the longevity. That is entirely it. Because I think if you're like,
he'll have it years later down the line. I'll be like, shit, guys, Habib was undefeated. Why aren't we talking about Habib as the greatest of all time? And I'm sure he'll come up in the conversation a lot because Habib is one of the greatest to ever do it.
I'd probably put him like number. Oh man, that's tough.
It's hard, man. It really is.
It's really tough because like it's like
the title defense is too fucking.
Where do you put
really
Cejudo?
hard.
You know what I mean? Like he's a guy who's a similar situation where like he wasn't at the top for that long.
Yep. Yep, that's the other. But then people would bring, well, he's a gold, he has a gold medalist. He
Triple
beat
C,
DJ. He was a two-weight champ. Could have been a three-weight champ. No. You can get into a lot of things. It's really, when it comes to fighting and saying who the greatest is, it's very hard because DJ could never fight John Jones, because of height, literally height and frame and all that, right? Too bad we can't just, shrink Jones down or make DJ grow and find out, right? But granted, we also get into the things where we talk, like you're talking about mobility and stuff like that. Even if that were to happen, we miss out on things like that, right? You couldn't perfectly translate it over. I know that gets into this whole like little fantasy thing and yada yada yada, but it's just the truth, right?
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And as far as the conversation, it's just a tough conversation to have, in my opinion, because there's so many factors, so many variables, and MMA is not it's not a sport that's been around long enough to have that conversation to a degree.
Oh yeah, it's very young, and this is something I want to talk to you. Do you think that maybe years from now we'll look back at the era like this is the Bill Russell era? If we're comparing it to basketball, right? You know what I mean? I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but this is like the Bill Russell era, where we have a couple outlying guys, when years from now we'll be more in the age that we are in now, kind of comparison to basketball, where there's more competitive guys, right? And like a few guys that, stand out, right? Like, how far do you think we are into MMA as far as into its like, how do I put into its history and how it'll play and kind of the level to it? Are we still pretty far back? Like we haven't seen the best that it can be yet.
I would agree with that we've not seen the best of what we could see yet, but I would not agree with the Bill Russell idea just because I feel like MMA evolved at such a quick pace. I feel like basketball's had 100 years of development, but at the same time, I feel like those changes were a lot slower. MMA went from this non-regulated, authority-driven sport to being sponsored by Monster Energy, having drug athletic emissions, and being in the world view in roughly 15 years. You know what I mean? Like the MMA evolved so quickly to the point where it's like, will we see more evolution?
Had a fast track,
for sure,
though.
but
Yeah. But yeah, I like I was telling you, I think it also had a fast track. You know what I mean? It also had to like move quick too.
To stay with society, because a lot of people were horrified by what UFC was back in the day.
I mean, it was kind of a horror show back in the day. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was cool, but it was kind of it
was human cockfighting. I believe that's
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but it was definitely not it was not a sexy mess.
Fair enough.
I don't know, man. It makes you wonder though. Years from 25 years from now, right? We'll give it another 25, right? Because that's roughly around how long the sport's been around, right? 25 years, right? 20 years, somewhere around there. Let's give it that, right? And another 25 years, right? When we're 45, almost 50, right? How is the sport going to be, right? How much will it evolve? Will guys who are specialists even be like a thing anymore, right? Will a guy who's a specialist be that, because like historically, right, until this point, some of the guys who have been, and there's obviously been the guys who have been, well mixed around guys who are good all around martial artists who stuck out, but then there's also been the specialists throughout history who have been, pretty dominant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there'll be a point where it's like maybe that doesn't work anymore. You can't just be, even when you have the most dominant wrestling, that doesn't cut it, right? You can't be like in the year 20XX, right? Because we don't know what year it'll be. You can't fight like Khabib. It's not possible to do it. You need to be well rounded, right? You can't fight like Izzy. It's just not possible. You need to have all elements of ground and stand up. I wonder if that's how it'll be years from now.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's probably more likely. I don't think we're going to see too many specialists. I think there's always going to be guys in the sport that are better at one thing than another because that's how sports work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there'll be guys who are better at one
specialists.
Thing. Yeah, because right now we still have guys who are specialists. You know what I mean? Guys who are really kind of, I wouldn't say one trick ponies, but they got their 1-2, right?
Yeah.
As it stands now. It's just something that's always like interested in me, like how far the sport will go here in a few years from now, because it's so young. But like I was telling you, it's also fast tracked so quick that I don't know. It just makes me wonder, and it's such an interesting thing. And with that, I wanted to actually bring something up.
Mm-hmm.
is the Nurmagomedov clan the modern day Gracies? In a way, not the same, but could they?
It depends on how the other ones do outside of Habib. That's the big thing.
That's the thing. That's the thing. We haven't done. That's what to do. Habib is our hoist, kind of to put it like that, right?
Yes, but at the same time, it's like Habib is the hoist, but we need to see who's gonna be the Henzo, because Henzo was an amazing motherfucker as well. Like, there's a couple of other dudes who were just amazing Gracies, but we need to see how the other Nurmagomedovs.
But they're just coming. It's coming to life though. It's happening as we speak, right? It's already began, right?
Yeah.
It's not at that point yet. But this was something that crossed my mind. It's like, are they going to be kind of like that equivalent? Or are these guys going to be like that other group? You know, is that clan? You know, because and it's not just it's them. It's who they also got the Islams, and who else is part of that? They have other guys who are part of that group too, right? And also guys that we probably don't even know of yet, who are trying to come up in other promotions right over there in Europe that we don't even know about yet. It's something that I was thinking about. Are they kind of that group? Or going to be that group in a way?
I think it's possible, but I think it's also too early to tell.
Yeah, I mean, but granted, you know, no one ever knew the Gracies would be the Gracies, right?
Yeah.
You knew the name, but then, you know, history happened. But but the reason I brought it up is like, dude, does that mean we're gonna have like a Sakuraba, like the Dagestani handcuffs are gonna get stopped by this whoever, right? Like who neutralizes their form of wrestling against the cage with the pressure, right? And it's like, oh, what if that guy would have fought Habib, you know? And that will be the question, right? Like that was something that was so that kind of interested me, and I was thinking about it. I know it's kind of a fantasy thing, but it was just kind of a thing that I thought about.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? There's never going to be a guy like Sakuraba. Let's go ahead and put that out there real quickly. Never again in the sport. You can quote me on this show. There will never be a guy like Sakuraba, purely just because he's not only a legend of the game in various facets and various ways. He was a guy that would fight anywhere, people like to say, oh yeah, I'll fight anywhere, anytime, any place. Kevin Holland is a guy like that, but he's probably the only one I'd say it's even close, remotely close. Because all fighters say that, but all fighters don't mean that. Sakuraba was a guy who weighed 200 pounds soaking wet and was fighting heavyweight monsters for years. He made a whole career of it. His record's not the most impressive thing. And obviously he would lose more and more as he would exit his prime, right? But even he was the Gracie killer, but he was so much more than that, dude. Like he was incredible, straight up. Just in all facets of the game. So Sakuraba is a straight up legend, and there's never been a guy like with him. So I think to go ahead and say it like that, we'll go ahead and I'm
saying an equivalent, not necessarily a guy like him, but an equivalent to beat the Habib clan, you know. And then, you know, getting back to that thing of guys who are kind of prolific, right? We don't know if we'll ever see around. And we talked about this a while back. This is actually a topic that I've been kind of hungering to talk about. We talk about Conor as a whole, dude. You know, for the people who don't know on the podcast, kind of how I initially got into the sport, and I guess I'm answering one of the questions we had. Conor was kind of one of my first introductions, right, to the sport. It was the Jose Aldo knockout that happened, right? The what is it, 4 seconds, right? 8 seconds, however fast it was. You remember, Josh? Whatever. It was 8 seconds, right?
Something like that. I don't know exactly.
It was seconds.
13 seconds. 13
seconds. 13 seconds. And I come the next morning, and I don't know if I talk about it on the podcast, and I asked Josh about this. And this is kind of how I got introduced to MMA, and how a lot of people probably got introduced to MMA within the last years is Conor McGregor, right? They heard the name Conor McGregor and they checked it out, right? You know, and I sat down a few weeks back and I watched the Conor documentary, and kind of his whole come up and him being on welfare and his situation and his hunger and just wanted to reach the mountaintop, right? And kind of how big of a superstar he came. I need to ask you, Josh, when he was fighting in, is it WEC? Is that what it is? Or what is it?
The Cage Warriors.
Or Cage Warriors, that's what it is. When he's fighting in Cage Warriors, how was that hype before he came to the UFC? That was something I saw in the documentary, and I'm like, you know, obviously it's hyped up as in the documentary. How much was that it was true when you were in, because you were you already writing at that point? I don't know if you
I was
were,
not writing at that point, but I was already watching.
Were you heavily following? Like, were you aware of the hype?
Yeah, I was aware of the hype. I heard the name before he like made his debut against, I don't remember if it was Brandao, but yeah, I was aware of the hype at the time. Coming into the UFC, is that kind of your question about like, was the hype like all that huge for him?
Yeah, like even before the UFC.
Yeah, the hype was not huge necessarily. Like, you can go back, I'm pretty sure you could probably find Reddit threads where it was like, two-weight division, Conor McGregor signs the UFC. So people were like, oh, he's a flashy striker. It'll be fun to have him, but he probably won't break top 5. That was generally the kind of consensus. He'll probably be a ranked guy, probably a top guy. But Cage Wars also did not have the type of pull that it does now. So that's part of what factored into it.
And then when that hype happened, man, did you see it coming at all, Josh, or was it just kind of like, man, it just kind of happened?
It was one of those things that it's very magical, and I don't think anything will be like it, because we're going to see dudes rise throughout the UFC. We saw, Izzy rise throughout the UFC just recently. A guy becomes a superstar. Jorge, who I think has had a type of career we're not going to see again. A guy that's been in MMA for like 15 years and suddenly becomes a star. Conor, though, it's truly going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. I truly believe that. Just a guy who's coming in with a little bit of hype behind him, but nothing too crazy. Just talking shit, making a name for himself, and just rising. Like, he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go knock out this dude. And then first round, I'm going to knock out this dude. And then he goes and knocks out this dude first round. Like it's just...
He fucking said it, man. He did it.
He just calling his shot every single time and just rising throughout. Like, and it's like every single time it's like, oh, he's fighting Dustin now. Dustin Poirier. Poirier's he's at this point an established top 5 guy. Dustin's not gonna take that shit. He's gonna beat him. Nope, knocked out first round. Oh, well, Dennis Seaver. Dennis Seaver's available. He's a good dude, very durable. Probably won't get knocked out by Conor. Conor knocks him out second round after mauling him. Oh, Chad Mendes, he's never faced a wrestler, though. Chad Mendes is a legend of the game. Been through wars with Aldo. Just, he's a straight up legend, right? He'll probably beat Conor. He's a hell of a wrestler. Conor's never faced a wrestler ever in his career. Knocked out second round. Oh, well, now he's facing the greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo. Knocked him out in 13 seconds. It's a rise we'll never, ever see again. Will there be stars like Conor? For sure. I don't think there'll be anything just particularly close to his journey, though.
It'll be too long, right?
I'll be dead. I'll be dead and gone before we have a guy with a story comparable.
Yeah, especially who did so many crazy things, right, in his career. I think it'll be really hard to top that off, right? I think that's the big thing. I mean, when are we ever going to see someone from the UFC go over to boxing, right?
Yeah.
It'll be we gotta
talk about that.
Well, yeah, that too. But granted, it'll be a while. I think it's an exciting thought. I always fantasize about it, but it'll be a while. It's something that I dream about, but it'll be a while. Yeah, no, dude, Conor's just this crazy figure that just stands out so much and kind of means so much to the UFC, right? And everything he did for it and kind of helped it grow. Because obviously I came into it because of him, right? I'm one of the products that came out of it. And look at me now. I'm making this content here with you. So clearly it's made an impact. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's also been in kind of the same situation. It's just wild, man. I it took me a while to think about it and kind of to keep going on the Conor topic a little bit more. I mean, what are your thoughts on your Conor right now, Josh? I think that's something that we didn't even display a lot. Now that we let it kind of, a month process right after the fight and everything going on. And I mean, what do you think about Conor right now?
Like in terms of his career where he moves forward from here?
I mean, just everything. Conor overall.
I think that he can go two pathways. He can either go ahead and try to build himself up, or he can throw himself into the fire against Dustin and probably lose again, and then probably end up retiring after 1 or 2 more fights. I think that's honestly just it. I think he's probably past his prime, and he looked I think I said at the time, but I felt whenever he lost to Dustin, it felt like an end of an era. Like, I don't think we're going to see Conor reach the heights that we thought he might have whenever heading into that fight. Like, regaining the title again is what I'm trying to say.
What if he does come back, though? I think that's the crazy thought, too. What if he does come back and proves us wrong, right?
MMA is not a sport where that happens too often.
No, right? But I mean, in life there's redemption, right? And if for some reason Conor came back and redeemed himself, right? Conor comes back. Let's say hypothetically the fight does happen, right? And Conor does come back and wins. I mean, that shakes shit up, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think if he wins that, then I'm not even sure who you put him in there for the belt against. Like, I have no clue.
Oliveira.
Oh my God, they would never do that fight.
Khabib comes back just as a fuck you.
That'd be hilarious.
And I think I think that can maybe pull him back because it's just kind of like, really, do you really want it again? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of something that would be interesting. I don't know, man. I think if anybody could prove us wrong, it would be him, right? Really? Like, if there was a guy to prove us wrong, think about how much of a fuck you that'd be to the world if Conor came back and was like, yeah, you guys fucking doubted me.
Yeah, for sure. If this guy could do it, it'd be him. But just MMA is not a sport like golf. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, and even then, redemption stories in golf have been pretty shitty lately too.
Well,
Josh.
they have. Okay, well, I know Tiger's gotten a car accident, but he had the greatest sports comeback of all time a couple of years ago. Like I'm not a big golf guy, just because I'm somebody who would rather do 17 other different things than watch golf. I think 17 is pretty conservative, by the way. I can think of I could probably name 50 things off the top of my head that are more interesting than watching golf. But he did have arguably the greatest sports comeback of all time, because I think the last time he won a championship was 2007. He got arrested. He got into 2 car accidents. He dealt with injuries in his leg and his back, and then he was semi-retired for 10 years. He comes back and wins the Masters in 2019. We're not going to see that in MMA. That does not happen. So MMA is not like a sport where you can just take a lot of time off, come back, and just be top level. And I think we saw that in the Dustin 2 fight. And is it possible to come back and win the title again? For sure. What do you say?
GSP, man, come on.
I guess that is true. But GSP was not losing a lot whenever he was on his way. Yeah. He wasn't taking heaps of damage.
Oh no, you're right. Something that I heard recently that made a lot of sense is look at Conor's last 3 losses. Kind of where they're at, or kind of have how they played out, right, and everything going on in the situations, right. And that was something that gave me a really good perspective, right. So, well, the last one was the first one was Floyd, right. Mm-hmm. He goes and does boxing, right. He changes his whole camp, beats Floyd, makes a lot of money, woo, right. Crazy, right. Life is just wild at that point for him. After that, he comes back, and did he fight Eddie after that? Or was that before? He fought Eddie before, right?
Yeah, he fought Eddie before.
Yeah. Okay, just making sure. And then after that, he fights Habib, right? He comes back, trains MMA, fights Habib, loses, takes a round from Habib. He's the only one to do that, right?
Yeah.
Makes him work for it. At least out of what we've seen out of the guys who he's competed against. And then now his loss against Dustin. I think with putting everything into perspective, they're really weird. Everything's really weird. Those 3 losses are really kind of just odd for me, if that makes any sense to you. As far as everything that was going on, the switch ups, the weight change, the camp change, and kind of everything going on behind the scenes, legally, rumors, the back and forth, the money, everything going on in his life at that point is wild. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think if things go a different way, a different direction, I think Conor is maybe in a different mindset, a different state. I know that's also just a what if scenario, but it makes me wonder, right? What could have been? What if everything kind of played out differently, right? What if he didn't fight Floyd, right? And he defended the title, and he probably would have defended it against Habib and probably would have lost. But who knows Who knows what would happen in between, right? I think it just plays out weird. is what I'm trying to get at.
It's depressing to me sometimes to think about like where Conor's career could have gone, because I truly think he had the potential to be a GOAT. I mean, I think you can make the case that he still is, but like I'm talking like top 3 GOAT conversation, like one of the greatest fighters of all time. And then he chose the money route. I don't blame him. I would have in my position. Like if I ever get in the position of selling out, I'm doing it 100%. But it's like it is a little bit sad to me. Like he could have done so much more.
Yeah, I think this is would you say this is the first time MMA we saw kind of, and we haven't seen it fully yet, right? Because like I said, we don't know, maybe Conor does come back, fights, and proves everybody wrong, right? That we saw kind of the first guy have their downfall for money while in MMA. Like big major one, because of significant amount of money, not because they're making somewhat money in their UFC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, this is definitely gonna be unforgettable, and obviously Conor's just a special thing, right? That's something else that we got to think about. It's truly heartbreaking. I try to be hopeful and be like, I don't think it's over yet, but to a lot of people they think it is. But then there's also a lot of people who don't think it is. I've listened to a lot of fighters talk about it, and they're like, yeah, I don't think Conor's done yet, which is interesting to me. But I think that's an interesting perspective, though. A lot of the people who do media and got people like us who kind of watch and give an opinion kind of think it's done. But I've listened to a lot of fighters, and they're kind of like, no, it's not over. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's over yet in terms of his career, but I think like in terms of championship, like I don't think he'll win a title again. As far as that goes, that's my opinion on like if it depends on what you mean. Like, is it over yet? Like, I don't think his career's over by any means. Like, I think he'll come back, but we fight 3 times more at least. But I think like with this conversation of him being like a top 2 guy, top 3 guy, I think those are over.
Shit, I mean that's how it goes, man. Yeah, I mean that's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
I mean, to get off the Conor topic a little bit, I want to talk about Tough. Because Tough is supposed to be starting next month.
Yeah.
We have no announcement on who the coaches are yet. We have some ideas. I kind of want to just throw this topic at you. What do you think it's going to be? And we know it will be middleweight and bantamweight, right? The competitors are going to be.
Yeah.
So already that's super exciting. I think weight classes that do kind of need new faces and some exciting guys. So I think that's a good choice. As far as the coaches of Tough, who do you think?
See, that's what's tough because it's no pun intended.
That's what's right.
Tough to deal with just because I have no idea. Normally, sometimes I have like a good idea, but like it feels like there's almost no buzz about the situation. So I actually like I want to give a guess, but I legitimately don't know.
Now, who would you like? Which is I think is another thing that would be fun.
Colby Masvidal.
I think Colby Masvidal would be great TV. More than Kamaru, whoever, on TV, in my personal opinion. I think Colby Masvidal would be great. You can market it great, and plus that it's a good fight.
Yeah, I'd love to see it happen, but it's not going to happen, I don't think.
No. I heard one rumor that it's more like I think Masvidal guaranteed, but it's just like that other guy is what they're kind of figuring out if it's going to be Kamaru or Colby. But obviously Kamaru would be the draw, right, since he's a champ.
Yeah.
And I mean, another one that I'd love to see, I know they're not going to do it, would be like Izzy Jones. I think that'd be such a fun season, dude. Like just to shit talk the back and forth,
that
right?
That would be fun.
That would be fun. In reality, I'm trying to think because, it's the comeback to Tough. They can't have, not trying to be disrespectful, they can't have a Davison, Brandon Moreno season. I know they already announced that, but you know what I mean. Right? Like, that's not how they want to bring it back. They don't want to have, Corey Sanhagen and, Cody Garbrandt. I'm not trying to be mean, but, these are not the guys you want for your Tough return,
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to get at. But I think Kobe and Monster One is like a given. I mean, that's the route I would go. As far as what you think, who would you like? I know I asked you again, but now that I kind of laid those out for you, would you change it up, or are you still kind of
still with Kobe and Masvidal? I want to see that bad blood play out like across the season.
Oh, man, I don't know. They need to announce it though. It's literally next month. We're weeks away. What are like?
I think after thinking about it, I think it's gonna be Masvidal Kamaru.
That's probably what they're gonna end up doing. That's really what I don't want. It's still good though. Don't get me wrong, but it's not what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely not what I want. As far as my topic list, Josh, and kind of what I want to touch on, that was kind of everything. I don't know if there's anything else you want to specifically talk about or anything you want to ask me.
Nah, man, I kind of went through all my stuff at the start as far as, well, actually, have you ever, this is actually something that, just to stick to the talk conversation real quickly and to end it out, have you actually ever watched a full season of Tough? There's just this has nothing to do with like.
I actually haven't, but I've watched like the giant like 30-minute compilations of a season.
Okay. So what I recommend to you as a tough virgin, I would go ahead. I would recommend to go ahead and watch the Chael Jones season. That's one of my favorite seasons of Tough, not because it's not drama heavy and there's not a whole lot of fighters. I guess there's a couple. Kelvin and Uriah came out of that season. That was the Uriah season where he's knocking everyone dead. But Chael's son was the greatest coach in the history of Tough, straight up. There's a couple of other fun seasons. I think they put them all on ESPN Plus, so I think I got to go back and watch through some of those.
Yeah,
I think
you're right. I could
because I've been binge watching a lot of shows recently since I've been having a little bit of extra time.
See, I wanted to watch it like live where I look forward to it, so that's why I haven't like bothered doing it. But I've seen Josh, these videos are like 40 minutes of like the best moments from each episode.
Yeah.
Like, they kind of, you essentially know the whole storyline throughout the season. Like you're not gonna miss anything through watching it. I saw the flyweight one when they brought in all the champions from all the different divisions. Which was it? Tim Elliott ended up winning that and fought DJ. Which looking back at it, it's like what the fuck were they thinking? You know, Brandon Moreno was on that season, and I think he's talking to who is he talking to? He's talking to one of the Brazilian fighters. And they're trying to talk, and he's like, "What do you do for a living?" Or they're just trying to. And Brandon's talking to him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a piñata maker." Oh, and then the other guy's like, "Oh, Christmas trees, yeah." Some of the funniest shit in the world, dude. I love it.
Yeah, man, Tough. I want to go back and watch a couple of seasons because it's very entertaining. But as far as it goes, are you ready to move on to fan question, my guy?
I am.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and go. Some of these are going to be rapid fire. Some of these are going to be like, I think there's a good conversation to have there. First up, this one was just a random. I put this out to Snapchat, Instagram, email, so on and so forth. This one's just a Snapchat question, so I don't have who it's from. Who's next for Max Holloway? This one's going to be short and brief because I think we've said multiple times. It depends on who wins the fight between Ortega and Volkanovski. Am I crazy for just giving that quick answer? Or is there any sort of...
I mean, you're right. I mean, is there anybody who is behind Max and Brian on the rankings list who truly deserves to fight Max?
No, but also here's the thing: is like I think we've been saying that like it depends on who wins between Volk and Ortega, but I don't think it depends anymore because there's nobody at featherweight's been active enough to give a shot to.
Yeah, sadly, and I don't know, man. You know, someone I think they could fast track to a title shot, not now, is Edson Barbosa.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If they throw in Edson, I like to see Edson versus Dan Ige again.
Dude, I like to see Edson versus Sabit. I love to see Edson versus Sabit. I think that's one of the guys I think they'll try to fast track and get into a title shot position. I think he'd be a fun guy.
He would be. I'd like to see Edson against a lot of those guys at the top.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Not to give him too much attention right now because he's not like the main talk right now. But yeah, as far as Max, undisputedly, Brian or Alexander, whoever wins that fight. I mean, there's no other option unless the only other option for Max is moving weight classes, which he went on he was talking to Ariel about this, and he's like, he said by the end of his career he might finish it at lightweight or even welterweight, which I thought was interesting. How do you feel about that? About hearing?
I did not know that.
Yeah, how'd you feel about welterweight getting thrown in there?
That one's interesting to me. Like I can see lightweight, but not welterweight at all. I think I don't want to say he'd get bodied there, but he would definitely. I don't even would he probably put him in the top 10. Those are some big boys up there.
That is some big dudes there. Interesting matchups. But yeah, undisputedly, yeah, for sure. That's next for Max.
For sure. And this one also a Snapchat question, no person behind it. How/why did you guys start the podcast? This one kind of I'm not sure if it'd be a long answer, but me and Angel talked about doing the show for at least 2 years before we ended up doing it, somewhere around there.
I mean, all jokes aside, Josh, as far as doing a podcast, way before that.
Yeah. Way
Not
before.
necessarily even not even just necessarily about
Not sports
related. Yeah, not even necessarily sports related, but we're talking, what'd you say, maybe
2012, 2013?
So 6-7 years maybe?
Yeah.
Which is crazy to even think about. But yeah, definitely like a 2-year talk in high school, thinking like, yo, we should do this, and then finally kind of coming to life, just because finally, I don't know if it was you who committed or something sparked in you. It was you who told me that let's do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what sparked it in you to tell me, hey, let's do this.
Yeah, it's really, really stupid. This answer I'm about to give. I wanted to do the podcast for years before this, and I just thought of the name Courtside Soundoff. I was like, well, it's good as any. So I went ahead and I texted you. I'm like, hey, bro, you want to do the podcast? Like, that was honestly all that went into that decision.
I wonder if I have that text saved somewhere. I hope
I don't know, maybe, but I was just like, I needed like a name and I needed like a logo. And I was like, the rest will figure itself out, because you and I have chemistry. We've been friends for a decade now. So it's like, I just needed that small thing. Those two small things. If we can figure that out, we can start the show. And at that time, I was also doing writing and starting to cover fights live and so on and so forth. So I was like, it would also make sense as like doing like a media thing to go ahead and make a podcast, just because it would be, more content coming out of me, and I get to do with my best friend and so on and so forth. So it was just, it all worked itself out. So that's kind of how the show came together. And now here we are 2 years later, episode 100.
That's lovely.
It's lovely, to see. And moving on to the next question. This one is from former co-host of the show, Nate Beggs, on Instagram. Why do people think a 13-fight win streak with 4 defenses is better than one with 9? I believe this is related to the Kamaru GSP talk, because I know some people were saying that Kamaru is the welterweight GOAT, and after he beat Gilbert, I have no idea why people think that. Is there any sort of legitimacy to that argument? Because I think he's totally on the fast track to get there, right?
I mean, I don't even think he's eclipsed Matt Hughes yet. I
don't think so either. I'm fully on that team as well.
Okay, so we're on the same page. Perfect.
Yeah,
if you think he's better than Matt Hughes now, then I'm going to have some strong words.
Matt Hughes is probably the most underrated fighter of all time. I
think. Yeah, 100%. I mean, he has a win over GSP.
He has a win over GSP. He has so many damn wins, dude. Like, he's so underrated. Like, in the GOAT conversation as well. Not even just welterweight GOAT.
Yeah, you're right. He's forgotten in the GOAT conversation too, 100%.
So yeah, man, like, I don't think he's even eclipsed Matt Hughes. I don't understand where all that talk was coming from. I saw some people were saying like just physically wise, like he could probably beat GSP. Like, he's like, in terms of that type of GOAT conversation. I don't think people are putting
gives GSP a good fight. I'll say that. We don't know, because we'll never know.
Yeah, for sure. But like, I'm gonna put him over Hughes. Like, we don't even need to talk about GSP. We can talk about Hughes real quick. Wins over Matt Serra, Renzo Gracie, Ricardo Almeida, Chris Lytle, BJ Penn, Hoist Gracie, GSP, Frank Trigg twice, Carlos Newton, Sean Shirk. Like, ridiculous.
That's BJ Penn in his best moment too, by the way.
Yeah, in his prime. He mauled them in the rematch.
Yeah, no, I think the thing, it goes back to on the come up, right? On the come up, took a lot of the guys out. I mean, shit, he has Leon on one of his early wins in the UFC.
Yeah.
And that's Leon's only loss. And Leon's about to fight here soon. And Leon's a different fighter from then.
Yeah.
Once again, for me, it's also the title defenses. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think title defenses are as important as most people think. Because, like, for example, if you have, like, I hate to use Woodley as an example, but Woodley has I think he has 4 title defenses, 5 title defenses.
Something
but if
like that.
Look into those wins. It's like, yeah, he beat Stephen Thompson in a fight most people thought he lost. He had a draw with Thompson, which counted as a title defense. He had a fight against Maia where nothing happened for 5 rounds, where he got a defense, like, so on and so forth. Woodley in his prime is a great fighter, but I might actually put Woodley above Kamaru as well in the GO conversation.
I mean,
Kamaru has a win.
I don't know. I mean, he'll pass Woodley for sure. I'll put it like that.
All right, fair enough. Is there anything else we would touch on this conversation before we move on?
No, I mean, I think we kind of cleared it out. I mean, just not yet, or maybe not ever.
Yeah, he might get there eventually, but not right now.
All right,
let's switch it to from Philip on Instagram. How'd you guys get into MMA? You talked a little bit about how Conor got you into MMA. Mine, I think, is
I mean, it's a little deeper than that. I'll put it like that.
For sure. But as far as mine, real quickly, it's relatively simple. I'm a big fan of the show Painkiller already. Big fan of that podcast. Listened to since 2010. Back in 2013 or 2012, they had Joe Lozon on the show, who's now one of my favorite fighters of all time, and by far the nicest fighter I've ever had the pleasure of interviewing. Letting me talk to him for a school project. Shout out Joe motherfucking Lozon for that one. The GOAT. But they were on that show. He was on that show, the podcast, and they just ended up talking about Jones Cormier 1. This is before it happened. This is like whenever they were talking about the fight. It hadn't even been announced at this point. I was like, damn, this seems pretty cool. I'll go ahead and look at these dudes up. And I saw Daniel Cormier ragdolling Bigfoot Silva and started watching Strikeforce highlights. I ended up going to like the bookstore close to me because they had UFC fights on DVD back in 2011, 2012. And I got Lesnar, Velasquez, and I think I got UFC 60 as well, which I think was Hughes Gracie on DVD. I just watched all the way through those. I'm hooked. Like, I'm in. That's pretty much it for me. So, Angel, what was your... And you said it's deeper than that. So what was your story?
Okay, so like I said, I heard about MMA, but and like I said, at the time, you had just like recently started writing for it while we were in high school. Freshman, sophomore year? I can't remember when you started writing.
2016. So
yeah, that'd be freshman year, yeah.
Yeah.
So freshman year, I know you're writing about it. I mean, I never really cared to look into it or watch anything, but I knew about it, right? And then the Conor knockout happens. I'm constantly hearing about it. I hear it because of the Optic guys. They were talking about it because they had sponsored a UFC. I think it was a UFC fighter. It's when UFC still had sponsors on the shorts, right? And they were talking about MMA at the time, and I heard about the knockout, and it was all over Twitter. It was a massive thing. So I had come to you, Josh. Me being an MMA virgin, not knowing anything. I asked you, and then I'm like, what's some fights that I should check out? And you tell me to watch Bigfoot Silva versus Northcutt. Fucking banger of a fight. One of my favorite fights still to this day. The highlight video with this song, they had this rock music playing in the back. The fight ends in a draw. It was the most epic shit in the world. And I'm always talking. I remember the days that I was asking about you. About the fight and then other stuff I should check out and what I should watch and that was just kind of that was the initial seed. That's where it all began, and that's how it all started. That's how I got into it, and unforgettable. Just sitting down at home playing that Northcutt Bigfoot Silva just fight, dude. That was dude, it's so good, and I wish I could remember what other fight you told me to watch. There was one more. I'm sure if I go somewhere and I try to figure out what it is, I could probably figure it out. But I'll always remember that one for some reason because it was so good. And that video, that specific video you showed me, is taken down. I can't find it anywhere. I can find the highlights, but not that specific one with that music. That it was just perfect. And it had the slow mo with the hits and the leg giving out. Oh, dude, it was so good.
It's classic. And yeah, man. So both our stories are kind of interesting in terms of getting into the sport. As far as if you guys want to get into MMA today, it's a lot easier now than it was back in 2011, 2012 for you back in 2015, 2016. Just because the sport now it is so much bigger than it was back then.
I got it at the right time from what you tell me.
Exactly. So yeah,
you kept telling me that back then.
Yeah. So it's my favorite sport on the planet for sure. This question, next one. Mr. Brown, I believe. It's kind of spelled weird, but regardless, says, he swiped up and said, gang shit. What's your favorite episode of the show you guys have done? I gotta go episode 20, bro. I think that was Big 3. Because for me, I think there's been, I have fun every single week, but that's by far the most memorable.
Because of the situation, yeah. There's a lot. I can't think of the specific I remember looking at it. One of my favorites is probably the All-Star Weekend, which was, I think this might eclipse it now, one of our longest episode.
That one. I know the one you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but that one was really fun. And then another one that was really fun was the Anthony Joshua one. And
that was a fun show.
And Andy Ruiz, both of them. the preview and then the victory afterwards.
Yeah, that was insane.
What's another one? I have a lot, man. I probably say that another one that was really fun was probably that's hard. I mean, there's a lot. There's definitely a lot. I enjoy a lot of episodes. Afterwards, I'm always like, that was a good episode, or that was a fun episode. But for sure, those two. And then I probably say that our last when MMA got announced to come back.
Oh, that was fun.
During COVID, when it officially we had our first fight back. That was probably for sure one of my favorite episodes, one of the funniest episodes, because we were making episodes through COVID.
The entire time.
We were making episodes
like 1 week, I think.
Yeah, 1 week where there was literally nothing we could do.
Yeah.
There was nothing we could cover, like literally nothing. No matter how hard we would have tried, there was nothing. And I mean, we covered episodes, and then I was out of town too. I was recording the episodes from my phone. I mean and all those COVID episodes when I wasn't at home, Josh, for me are probably some of my favorite episodes because of just the effort I had to put in to make them. And then you too.
Yeah.
Having waking up early and all that.
Yeah, so it was those COVID episodes were pretty fun just because like I'm somebody who needs structure in my life, like in order to like even just to function, right? Like whether it be like school, having a job, so on and so forth. Whenever COVID came, wiped my shit out. Like I had nothing to do. Like I was just like I would like I just did nothing. So like giving the show once a week, give me something to look forward to, something to do. So those COVID episodes were fun. Big 3 was a lot of fun for me just because like the circumstances behind it. And that was early in the show too. That was like only 2 or 3 months in. So that was interesting as well. Also, I got to go. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones. That was like an interesting episode just because like we attended the press conference and then immediately filmed our reaction, and I was just so amped up for that show because I had a couple questions, so I was like, fuck, dude, oh my god.
Ariel Hawani fucked up your name.
He did. Joff Evanoff from Courtside.
Is that PewDiePie at 258?
Oh my god.
People don't know about that.
Yeah, most people don't know about that one, but yeah, man, there's been a couple of fun shows. I generally have fun every single week, but like in terms of like most highlights, that one I think anytime we did an interview, I think Sam Alvey was fun, Mike Jackson was fun, but yeah, man, like I have a lot of good memories of the show.
Nate episode,
that one was classic. That one was funny as fuck for me to edit because like
that's a cult classic though at this point.
That is a cult classic episode. Like I'd love to get Nate on one of these days again, just like
all 3 of us.
Yeah, that would be.
I think that'd be fun. We gotta talk, dude. Should we do that for? Actually, we'll talk about it off the air.
We'll talk about that off the air.
I already have an idea.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, man. So moving on, from that kind of topic, this one's from my girlfriend Leslie. Shout out her, Leslie Chubbuck, on Instagram. Give it a follow. Favorite moment in MMA history, and then she had another question. Favorite moment in sports history. MMA one, straight off the top for me. I gotta go Bisping winning the belt, bro. I'm not sure if you remember this. It was one of the first cards that you and I watched together, like in UFC 199. I remember like we were watching it, and at the same time we were playing COD Zombies on Derice. And like Bisping winning the belt, I yelled so loudly in my living room I woke up everybody in my house because I was a huge Bisping fan. And that's like a moment that it will forever live for me, like in MMA. Like that was just so insane. So, what is your favorite moment in MMA history, just overall?
See, this is hard for me because as far as watching, there has been, I think it's more important to have watched than like been there for it rather than something that already happened before my time. I think as far as watching, I'd probably have to say. Ooh. It's gonna sound weird, but one of my favorite moments, and it's because it's back to early on, because when I was getting into sport, was that CM Punk fight, dude. Remember we were talking about CM Punk every week, Josh? We were talking about CM Punk every week, like, okay, this is how he could potentially beat Mickey, but it's not gonna happen, And
but it could happen.
But it could happen, but it's not. And we were talking about CM Punk all the time, dude. Remember that was a big thing to us. Every week just talking about it. But I think as one of my most memorable that I will never is that Yoel Romero knee to the head of Chris Weidman is unforgettable. It's like stitched in my head perfectly. I'll never forget that moment.
That was insane. And real quickly, like, not to backtrack, the Punk lead up, dude, that was some of my favorite stuff in MMA history, because that was 2 years of build up, right? Like, he signed in 2014, he signed January 2014, fought in September of 2016. So it was 2.5 years of build up. Could be getting the timelines wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. So yeah, man, that was just an insane build. I remember talking about that. And do you remember like the UFC picks thing? Like,
I missed
UFC,
that. I really
I
missed
it
that.
so much, dude.
It was so fun.
Yeah, and I remember you and I sitting down for UFC 203, giving our pick, and I think I picked Punk via first round submission. I think I did. Because
we did it for the
Hanzo
memes,
Gracie,
though.
who trained with Punk, was like, yeah, I got faith. And Punk, he has a great guillotine. I'm pretty sure Mickey's just going to shoot in. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll trust Hanzo Gracie. He knows more than I do. Like,
well, it was quick. He's not wrong.
Fair enough. And yeah, man, moving on from MMA history, favorite moment in sports history, man, that's an almost unanswerable question.
There's so many.
Because there's so many, man. And if I were to go and isolate it down to one thing, like, I remember, you know what? Okay, so I thought about this question a lot. I've thought about it a lot for the last few days. So 2014, this is the story, Josh. I'm going to go ahead and give a quick story on this one. 2014 Sugar Bowl. For those of you guys that don't know, college football, they always name their bowl game something stupid. This one's the All-State Sugar Bowl, right? Oklahoma is taking on Alabama. Oklahoma at this point was only in this game because they were a big name school. That team was pretty bad, not going to lie. They may have won 10 games, but because the Big 12, that conference that year, was terrible. Everybody else was bad, right? So we made it into the bowl game against Alabama, who was one play away from going to the national title game. They were 21.5-point favorites, I believe. And I remember talking to my dad, because my dad, he's obviously from Oklahoma, went to school there, huge fan. He's like, yeah, you know what? I got faith we're going to pull it out. I'm like, well, my dad knows better than I am. I'm thinking we're going to pull it out. But I was watching all the talking heads, like, yeah, Oklahoma's going to get smashed. Should have been Oregon. Should have been this team. Should have been that team. And what then ensued was the most entertaining, insane story like in college football I've have yet to see to this day. Like, to this day, you know what I mean? Like, you guys don't know, Oklahoma, they did not have a starting quarterback that year. They were going back in between Blake Bell, who's now a tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, and Trevor Knight, who never even made it into the NFL. They were going back and forth between them. They ended up going with Trevor Knight, who started like 3 games all year, and he ended up putting on the greatest, arguably one of the most like shocking performances ever in college football history. I think he put on 5 touchdowns on Alabama, who had the greatest defense in the nation. They ended up winning by, I believe, 10. And it was one of the most insane games I've ever seen. 2014 Sugar Bowl is my all-time favorites moment in sports history. So, Angel, if you were to go ahead and isolate one, or even not even isolate one, if you had a couple to go and give.
Oh, man, there's so many, dude.
I know, that's the problem.
There's so many. I mean, that I've watched, that I've seen. I mean, definitely, like, I'll come down in recent, I'll go from most recent to, like, I guess a little later. Dude, Teofimo Loma, I mean, watching that live was crazy. And it was free. It was on free TV, dude.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I think that was one of the craziest things to me, too. Andy Ruiz beating Anthony Joshua. That was crazy. One of the craziest moments in boxing history, right? First heavyweight Mexican champion. In 2018, Mexico beating Germany in the World Cup just to fucking not even make it out of groups. Later on, I think, is what ended up happening. But I was there with my dad at his 1-bedroom apartment there, just sitting down with him. Dude, it's going to sound weird. Logan Paul, KSI on the zone with you in my dad's living room. Like,
oh my God.
That's a crazy moment that even happened, that whole fight. I
remember us standing at the end of that fight, going through all the math possible, because so I got a knockdown, but it wasn't scored, and then Logan got a knockdown, but the 2 points were deducted, and this round could have gone that way, and because like the judge, like I felt like the score tallying took like 17 minutes, like way longer than normal.
It felt like forever, but yeah, dude, and in that moment from the United Kingdom, KSI, like it's unforgettable to me, dude. It's one of my favorite moments in sport history. In recent memory. And dude, do you remember the Royals run?
Oh my God, I almost said that one.
What is it? What was that?
2014 and 2015.
How many years, dude? Because even before that, like there had to be, what was it, like 3 or 4 years for that run going on, right? Because they were like legitimate competitiveness, dude. I was there watching actively like all those World Series, and I'm not that crazy into baseball. And like another and a memorable but sad moment is Ventura's passing, dude. That really fucked me up because he was my favorite player on the team. Dude, he would come out with his gold chain on. Dude, I hat on. It was just, dude, he was such a cool dude. I had so much hope in him, and I was like, that guy's the future. And I wasn't even crazy into baseball, and I'm still not. I really didn't give too much of a fuck. But for some reason, I love that kid. I was there for the Johnny Cueto games and his good and bad performances. And oh man, dude, Kane and Ventura, all those guys. It does make you sad, I know, Josh. But it really is one of those memorable moments for me, dude.
Yeah, I almost said both. I almost said that because, like, I've always been more of a football fan than a baseball fan, but I was always a huge, like, I was into baseball before I was into football. I played baseball growing up. Like, I was
Salvi getting MVP, which I didn't think he deserved it, not gonna lie. Which was so
like that was just such an insane run. Both years, man. Like, and like here's the craziest part, right? I'm not sure if you remember this. So the Royals lost in the World Series of 2014. Right? They come back in the Super Bowl. I remember because you can pay obviously for Super Bowl spots. I remember distinctly they paid for a Super Bowl spot, basically like announcing they're like basically saying that we're coming back. Like it was like Forever Royal or some bullshit, like the tagline for next year. During the Super Bowl, they put a spot for the Royals. Like they bought a spot just to say like, yeah, we'll be back. And guess what? Then they won the fucking title. Like that was just insane.
Yeah, no, that was one of the crazier moments. And dude, school got canceled the next, or was it? The day not after. That day after day.
Oh,
after.
Yeah, it was a parade day. Yeah,
the parade, which was sick, man. I mean, that was super cool. And oh, dude, that was a fun time.
It was a fun time. But yeah, man, those were some fun times. And I guess one final question, just to go ahead. One final question.
What a way to close it out, right?
Yeah. This one is from Shun. He asked, why does Josh have such a massive fucking girthy cock, and why is it not slapping me across the face right now?
It's because you're doing the podcast. Duh.
I'm busy. I'm a busy man. Yeah, I learned a lot about our fan base during this. Shun also had another question saying that if he sent us spaghetti, that would I eat it live on air? The answer is yes. The answer will always be yes. If you guys want me to do something live on air, just go ahead and send me it.
As long as it's not illegal or sexual.
I'm not. Who checks the mail? You know what I mean? Well, I'm sure it'll be fine. No,
well, tell that to FPS Russia.
Exactly, that's the joke. Yeah, man. Yeah, so that was fun fan questions, and then we have two final topics before we close out. And both of them are in the world of boxing. One of them much bigger than the other. We'll start off with the big topic first. Antonio Tarver taking on Frank Mir. This one is official. Actually, I do have some sources telling me this fight is not official yet. They need to get athletic commission approval. That's a Courtside Soundoff exclusive right there. This fight is going to be set for 10 rounds, they're hoping. And it is yet to be confirmed. Just because they need to talk to the athletic commission in Georgia about it. I don't think they'll encounter any issues, but they'll need to talk to him first because this is a guy making his professional debut. And that guy being Frank Mir, Antonio Tarver, Frank Mir on the undercard of Jake Paul, Ben Askren. What do we say about this one? Do you have right, like whenever Triller has done these fights and whenever we've had a lot of these kind of freak show fights recently, I'm like, oh, I have some sort of interest. I understand who this is for. It's not for me, but I understand who this is for. Do you have any interest at all in this fight whatsoever?
Dude, I could maybe be interested more in Floyd versus Conor too than this. Like, I'm generally interested, but I'd have more enjoyment watching Floyd versus Conor 2 than this. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just the truth.
Yeah, and I'm the same page, dude. Well, first of all, I have no problem seeing that fight if I were to actually go ahead and see that one. But, man, what a fight. I don't know what to say about it. I'm sure we'll be there for press if they do have like a press conference. At least virtually, anyways, because we did that for the last Triller show as well. Yeah, man, it's happening. I don't know what to say about it. It's the first time I've seen like a unanimous like, what the fuck is this sort of, because like, right, it's not like we're having a guy like Conor move over into boxing who's like an actual striker. Frank Mir he's a grappler. He started to fall in love with his striking later in his career, but he's a grappler. He's in my opinion the greatest heavyweight grappler of all time, but he's still a grappler. So him to be fighting Antonio Tarver, who I personally have a soft spot for historically, just because he was in Rocky Balboa. He did knock out Roy, which, that's a slight, because Roy's my favorite boxer of all time, but, he was in Rocky Balboa. So
he beat Roy twice. Just put it out there, Josh. I know you don't want to say, but he did beat Roy twice.
He did beat Roy twice and had the most ruthless, you got any excuses tonight, Roy, which was the most badass, like, thing ever, because then he knocked him out in the first round. He knocked him out 2 minutes later. Like, that is ruthless. That's badass. So I love Antonio Tarver. He is 50, though.
Yeah.
Frank's only like 40, so it's like a little bit of a difference, but whenever Antonio Tarver retired, he was still a good guy. Like, his last fight was a draw against Steve Cunningham, where I thought he won, and Steve Cunningham is known for the guy that pretty much he knocked down Tyson Fury. Knocked him down really badly whenever he's like a cruiserweight. So, yeah, man, it's something. I mean, do you have anything else before we move on to the actual big boxing show this week, the big drama show?
I mean, dude, it's so weird. Is that gonna be on? That's not on the Jake Paul Ben Askren card, is it?
Yeah, it is.
It would be. Oh my god.
It's on the undercard. I don't know if it's. Oh, there's one more piece of news. I don't think it's the co-main, because I'm not sure it's official yet, and I have no inside sources on this one. I've heard, that Teofimo's next fight, like, Triller won the rights, right?
Yeah, I saw that they won the bidding.
Apparently, they might be the co-main to Jake Paul.
That's so fucking weird. What the fuck? They're not gonna do that, right? I feel like it'd make more sense for them.
Brian Cavanaugh, the CEO for Triller, said they're looking at it as a co-main.
I feel like it'd make more sense as a main event, and then Jake Paul and Ben Askren as a co-main. You get so many eyes. Yeah,
here's the only way that it makes sense to me is if they do that fight later, because here's the only way that it makes sense for me. If they're gonna have Teofimo be a co-main too, and it's Evander Mike 3. Because I don't agree with that, but that would be the trilogy of two of the biggest fights throughout boxing history.
I guess in a way, because if they put him on the co-main, people will have to watch them to get to Jake and Ben. You know what I mean? Yeah, and here's the thing. I think it would be smart for have them on the card together, because I think Teofimo, if kids who watch Jake Paul watch Teo fight, they'd be like, oh shit, I like this dude. Could you imagine him knocking out this guy and doing like the floss dance? I can. He hasn't done that. He didn't do that for the Loma fight yet. He gives some good respect to Loma. Yeah. So, but he's a bad motherfucker, bro. Like, I could see him getting a lot of fans if he fights on the same card as Jake Paul. So I think it makes sense that way. But like, having him on the co-main is legitimately disrespectful. Oh yeah, I mean, you're talking about a champ, undisputed, right? Or yeah, almost undisputed. Beat one of the greatest. I mean, I'm sure it's too early to call Loma a GOAT, but like potential GOAT. Loma did a lot in a very short time in his professional career that could put him in a very competitive conversation. I'll say that. Fair enough. Yes, I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah, so it's definitely interesting, because like, I'm not sure why they do that. I don't know if that's going to be the co-main, but I know that they were very clear on the fact that Tarver Mir is not the co-main. That is just an undercard fight. It's going to be 10 rounds, though, which means it's going to be a professional fight. It's not going to be an exhibition. Okay. So that's something. But, yeah, man, Schroeder's making moves. I mean, I love to see it, because I love to see any sort of... It's so random, too, because they were just kind of like a TikTok-like app. Yeah. But then they came in, they did a lot of good stuff for the Mike fight. I think they promoted that fight better than Top Rank or... the zone would have. You know what I mean? Like, I think they did an amazing job with that in the promotion, which I think we were vocal on the show, because they had to deal with a lot from the athletic commission too, basically shitting on the fight. California be like, no, it's not a real fight. It's not real. Like, it's not even like that whole situation. So they dealt a bad hand, and they dealt with it pretty well. So shout out Triller, man. I like any sort of competition, especially if it leads to dudes getting paid more, because they put a big load, like a big stack of money down for this fight to get Teo's next fight. He's going to be paid a lot more than what Top Rank or somebody else would have paid him. Oh, yeah. They're going to make dumb money. I mean, good for the guys, right? Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. But anything else on this kind of Triller topic before we close out the show with, talk of the big fight this week?
I'm not sure if you call this fight big.
No, not necessarily. I mean, we're getting into this, right? We're talking about the Canelo fight now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it's just him taking another fight at that weight class to show that he can fight at that weight class. But it's the disrespect, man. They already have his next fight booked. I mean, he's gonna fight, and it's in December, right? Is the date they're kind of looking at?
No, he's fighting in May.
No, I'm not talking about he's gonna fight in May.
Yeah, I believe he said he's gonna fight. His schedule for this year: February, May, September, December.
Holy shit, that's insane.
Yeah, that is, and he's gonna be fighting Billy Joe Saunders, I believe, in May. Don't quote me on this.
That's crazy. I thought he was gonna do it in December for some reason.
I know he said he's gonna fight in December though.
I mean, no matter what though, they do have the next opponent in mind. Like it's gonna, like they have it set. Like regardless of, I mean, they know the outcome of this fight, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot that's because obviously, look, he's facing a tough kid, a kid out of Turkey by the name of how do you pronounce his name? Anvi Yildirim. And he's defending his belts, you know, super middleweight. The kid, I believe, is 15-2, 16-2, somewhere around there. 2 losses, obviously, being to Anthony Durrell, and he got knocked out by Chris Eubank. Excuse me, he's 21-2. That's my bad. So I was underselling him. But his 2 times he stepped up to face top competition, he got knocked out by Anthony Durrell and Chris Eubank. I guess Durrell was a TKO, but still. Yeah, man, it's not good. It's not good. I'm not going to ask you if you think Canelo's going to win, because this is more of a layup than Rocky Felding, in my opinion. Like it's a pretty big layup. Obviously, he still needs to make it, but do you have any interest in the fight as a whole?
I mean, I'll watch it because it's Canelo, you know. I just want to see how it's going to happen, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
And just him at the weight, see how he's looking. I mean, he'll show something cool, you know. I mean, that's more or less what it is. I mean, the guy is ranked. BoxRec has him up there, and like I said, I usually like the BoxRec rankings a lot. I mean, you can't shit on Canelo because you know Canelo's gonna fight a really good guy after this, so it's not like he's not gonna take this on further, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, man. I mean, there's not much to say, man. We know what Canelo's gonna do in this fight, and we know what's gonna happen after Canelo wins this fight.
Yeah, we know what's gonna happen. I mean, is there anything else you want to say to the fans before we close out Soundoff 100?
We made it to 100 episodes. We hit the 3-digit mark, and then obviously next month we come up on 2 years of the Courtside Soundoff podcast. Yeah, we would have been yesterday a month from now. Because I think the first episode was uploaded on the 25th of next month.
It's definitely crazy to think about in retrospect, and I don't want to get all sentimental, just close out the show, because I think we already kind of did that, whenever we were talking about how the show got made. But it's dude, whenever we started the show, it was 2 years ago. It's such a long time, especially whenever we're at our age. You know what I mean? Because we're both I think you just turned 20. I'm 19. We were
so
dead
weird
ass.
Hearing that, dude.
I know, it's really weird, right? But we were in high school whenever we started the show, and we were in middle school when we started talking about doing this show. So to actually make it to 100 episodes, to actually have a modicum of success, because we have 2 amazing sponsors, which, by the way, I forgot to mention. If you guys want to have any of the fun this weekend, watching any of the shows going down, I know obviously UFC has a show going down. Basketball, as always. If you guys want to, throw some money down on League of Legends, golf, if you're that type of guy, I'm not sure why you would. You guys can use code Courtside and Monkey Knife Fight and have some fun. And obviously Rogue Energy, and we made to 100 episodes, and we've built up a decent sized audience. So it's definitely surreal, to an extent, and to have covered the big 3 live, and also the big one's the Mike fight. We were we were on the press row for Mike Tyson's comeback fight.
I think I appreciated that a lot more when it originally happened. I haven't appreciated it so much after, but that is really a big deal.
Yeah.
I do need to appreciate that more. In the short time that we've been doing this, we've done a lot for a very young group of dudes, and then you too, Josh, as far as what you've done writing and shit with kind of do some closing, like I said, not to get too emotional or whatever, right? But you do a lot for this show, dude. You do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. You get stuff rolling, and you get these guests and you edit and you upload and you do all of this, and it's you just know, so it's out there on permanent audio for the internet for years to come, that you do a lot of work for here, and I do appreciate you a lot for doing it.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, man. And it's definitely the work is worth the reward in a sense, because back whenever the show started, we didn't really do a whole lot in terms of like editing or guests or anything. We were kind of just building our stuff up, and now we're kind of there where it's like I feel like I never listened to the show just because it's like I've been there, like I lived the show, but like just doing the show live, I could tell there's like it's better than what it was when it began, and that's always the idea. We just want to keep on improving. And yeah, man, outside of that though, I mean, I know that we hit our I haven't looked at the exact time yet, but I know we went over, this is the longest show in our illustrious 2-year history.
That was the goal.
That was the goal, and hope you guys enjoyed, and here's to another 100. If we're still here for 200, that'd be insane. Like, just
I think we will be, Josh. I think we will.
Yeah, I think so too, man. Even just hitting triple digits is just insane. But I don't know, man. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm at Josh Soundoff on Twitter. He's at __01 at Courtside Sound1 for all information related to the show on Twitter. That's the main place where we are. But outside of that, hope you guys enjoyed. Peace and butt grease. Mouse click.